Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 797 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we're seeing Ukraine is sieging Crimea. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we have gotten major news that the Ukrainians have conducted massive strikes inside of Crimea. We have also gotten information that the Russian economy is going down the drain and will most likely be broke by the end of this year, guaranteed at this point. We've also been getting news from Poland that they've made an official request that they want U.S. nuclear weapons stationed inside their country, and we've also gotten huge news from the front lines today that things have heated up drastically, and one of the highest loss rates in a single 24-hour period happened today for the Russian army. Not only that, we even have a little bit of Middle Eastern news for the folks around who care about that, as we've been getting news that once again, tensions and the situation is continuing to escalate in the region, and it appears that it is going to be really cooking off once again and heading into a full-on conflict, or at least some sort of armed action. We are going to be covering every single bit of this tonight. But before I get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to the Lee Spring Army, which was able to raise almost $13,000 for Save the Children this Sunday.
Let's go!
Unbelievable. It was the biggest fundraiser that we have run in months, and it's going to be helping out a nonprofit that works around the world, but specifically also in Ukraine, helping to save the lives of children there, and also help out their families as well. A huge thing. Also, one more thing. We have to make sure to get this out because this is the final day that this will be a thing that exists on this channel. Today is the last day for the LSA mugs. So if you want an LSA mug, make sure to go down to the link in the description below for the LSA mug, which is officialenforcerstore.com, and you'll be able to get on the official Enforcer website. You'll be able to get the mugs right here. This is exactly what they look like, and many people in the live chat have already been telling us that they have received their mugs. So if you want to know how good the quality is, ask around in the live chat, because everyone has been saying that the mugs look stunning and that they're incredibly nice. So make sure to get one.
The mugs are the best quality. You can't find better quality anywhere else. 2 mugs, great mugs.
They're incredible, and make sure to get them while you can, because this limited edition run is going to be ending at the end of the stream tonight. So while this stream is live, these are going to be the last few hours that you can get one of these LSA flag mugs while there's still a thing that exists, because after the stream ends tonight, they will not exist. So with that, it is now time for us to move on into the news itself, because we have loads of it. And we're going to be starting off with the major news that the Russians have been attacked seriously inside of the Crimean Peninsula and have sustained some pretty high losses from what we know. We do not have video and picture evidence to confirm this yet, as it has only been a few mere hours since the attacks occurred, but we were able to hear that over the entirety of the peninsula, 4 different sites were targeted and attacked by Ukrainian forces. The weaponry that attacked these bases were different depending on the base. We do know up in the Dzhankoi area and the Simferopol area, these were the first bases that we can confirm were attacked by the brand new ATACMS long-range missile provided by the United States to Ukraine, and that these bases were hit by multiple missiles from what we were told. We were also told that apparently a installation near to the area of Saki, and also one towards the area of Olenevka, was also hit as well by some kind of Ukrainian drones or some other kind of munitions that flew into the peninsula and ended up striking these bases as well. Overall, this is one of the largest singular attacks that we have seen on the entirety of the peninsula so far, and it is certainly giving us a big idea that the Ukrainians are really trying to limit the amount of available Russian air power that can be used in Ukraine, and not only that, greatly reduce the ability of the Russian air defense to be able to counter what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russians throughout the rest of the war. These two are very important factors, because without the ability for Russia's Air Force to operate, the Russian Air Force will not be able to conduct all of the sorties, because right now we're hearing that's about 100 to 150 sorties per day on Ukrainian forces, and this means that the defensive situation for Ukraine at the moment will be drastically improved by this change. Not only that, but from what we understand, air defense sites inside of Crimea were also targeted as well, meaning that the Russians' responsiveness to incoming Ukrainian attacks is going to be decreased. pretty much in a short term, this entire attack is flipping the tables in between the Ukrainians and the Russians and making sure that the Russians are on the back foot in an air battle while the Ukrainians are getting the upper hand while still waiting for those F-16s, which we know will be in Ukraine within a couple of weeks. Not only that, but we were able to get the additional news, which we have right up here near Dzhankoy on the map, that ATACMS did hit their targets inside of Crimea. From what we understand, based off of this infographic, which is some of the best information that we have at the moment, 8 ATACMS missiles hit the Dzhankoy airfield, and 4 ATACMS missiles ended up hitting the area of Hviardysky, which is just north of Simferopol. I'll be able to show you all that here on this map if we zoom into the Crimean Peninsula and we go to the Hviardsky or Gvardsky airfield. You can actually see the airfield right here, and it appears that in this picture, during this time when this was made, it was housing a tactical bomber wing of Su-24s and also a air support wing of Su-25 Frogfuchs. Of course, this could change from time to time, and it does appear that in this satellite picture, there are literally absolutely no other air wings present at this airbase. So if we were to take the information that we have off of Google Maps to be the case, and these were all of the air wings that were present at the airfield, this means that if any damage was caused, it's being caused to the aircraft that would most likely be conducting close air support operations inside of Ukraine in the form of Su-24s and Su-25s. The losses may be significant, much like they would be for Su-34s. But in reality, the air targets that the Ukrainians do not want to destroy on the ground the most, and this seems a little bit counterintuitive, are the fighter jets of the Russian Federation, the Su-35s, the Su-27s, and also the MiG-29s and the few MiG-35s that exist. And we haven't really heard of those being in operational service in Ukraine, but nevertheless, they actually don't really need to hit those aircraft or destroy them, because as far as the most dangerous thing for Ukraine right now is concerned, it is actually the tactical bombers, close air support aircraft, and also the other tactical bombers in the form of the Su-34 that are the biggest risk to Ukrainian forces on the ground and could be greatly changing the battlefield situation just due to the amount of firepower that they can now drop off near to the front line in the form of glide bombs. This is, once again, a big move for Ukraine. We still have not gotten a lot of news or information about the exact damage that was caused at Hviardsky or in the area of Dzhankoy, which were the 2 airfields that were attacked, but we do know that, once again, an air defense station near to the area of Saki was possibly stricken and knocked out overnight, and also we heard towards the area of Olenivka, another kind of a command post or surface-to-air missile site was also stricken and knocked out of action in this area as well. Once again giving us a fairly good idea that the attack was extensive in its goals and hoping to not only knock out Russia's offensive air capabilities, but also their defensive air capabilities nearly at the exact same time in one large attack. At the exact same time that we've been getting this news out of Crimea, showing that the Ukrainians are attempting to decapitate Russian Air Force abilities over time through these multiple attacks, we have also gotten news that they are doing the same thing not just in Crimea, but also within the area of the southern Russian Don, which is just south of Rostov-on-Don. But this is some fairly interesting news that we got here from the British Ministry of Defense, once again giving us an idea that the Ukrainian strategy here isn't just to strike airfields behind the lines at random and try and cause damage. There is an actual method to the madness behind these attacks, much like there is in Crimea. According to the British Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainian Security Service, or the Security Service of Ukraine called the SBU, used some drones to strike the Kushkevskaya airfield and the Ilsky and Slavyansk oil refineries in Krasnodar Krai Oblast. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that they downed 66 drones. We don't know if that number is accurate or not. It's highly likely that it's inaccurate and probably greatly inflated. They may have downed some drones, but not 66 of them. But nevertheless, the Kushkevskaya airfield hosts Su-34s, which are the tactical bomber variant of the Su-24 airframe, and it also housed Su-35S Flanker Ms, which are the air superiority fighter of the Su-27 line of aircraft. These are used daily in strike missions, although the Su-35 is used a lot less. The Su-35 doesn't have the kind of hard points or the kind of ability that the Su-34 has to be able to conduct glide bomb operations or any other kind of ground support operations with great efficiency. It can do it, but it just can't do it well, so it's most likely used less than the alternatives, which is the Su-25, the Su-24, or the Su-34. Nevertheless, Russian fighters at Kushchevskaya and a number of other air bases typically conduct 100 to 150 sorties per day, which is a significant percentage of those launching munitions all along the front lines as Russia's attempt to force breakthroughs through sheer firepower alone. We see these actually near the area of Krasnoyarivka and Chasiv Yar a very large amount, as they're hoping that these larger glide bombs that they're starting to use are beginning to cause some kind of damage. But in reality, the Ukrainians are realizing that this is causing damage to allow these aircraft to continue to get through, and they don't really have a good way to either shoot down these aircraft at the moment in larger numbers or at least at an effective rate, or to intercept the incoming bombs effectively either. And this leads them to the idea that instead of destroying these aircraft or their munitions in the skies over Ukraine, let's destroy them on the ground in occupied Ukraine or inside of Russia. And that's what they've been doing with the drone attacks and strikes. So this is all part of a large strategy to try and knock out Russian air power and make sure that it's not as effective going forward as it has been in the past, or at least over the past 2 months when Ukraine started to run out of a lot of its ground-to-air munitions. But moving on from that, we have also been hearing that at the exact same time inside of Russia, Russian exports of gasoline and other fuel products have been drastically dropping to the point that it is at a literal historic all-time low. This isn't the lowest point in 40 years. This isn't the lowest point in 50 years. This is the lowest it has ever been in history. It is unbelievable. And we actually have a little bit of information right here from NOAA reports. According to NOAA reports, the drone strikes have reduced their shipping of diesel and gasoline products to 712,000 tons per week. That is compared to the 844,000 during the same week in 2023. And there's actually a lot that goes into this that is very interesting. And not only that, it shows that the Russian economy is going to be greatly suffering here within just the next few months. Russian oil and gas exports, before Ukrainian drone strikes started to knock out the refineries, had actually reached record highs historically, meaning that they were producing a large amount of oil and gas and attempting to export it abroad. A lot of these countries are neutrally aligned countries like Pakistan, India, and nations in the Middle East that were attempting to receive their, and also Central Asia as well, I gotta point that out, that were trying to receive oil at incredibly cheap prices, and considering that the Russians were selling this gas and diesel products at far cheaper prices than they ever had in the past to European countries, they began to massively ramp up production to try and meet at least a good price point where they would be making the same amount of money off of their gas and diesel exports that they would have before the war when they were exporting it to Europe. Ukraine started to strike these refineries, and not only did that knock out their ability to export a large amount of diesel and gas every single week, it also massively knocks out their ability to keep the war effort running at home. Right now, from what we understand, the Russian Federation is at a deficit of around 600,000 barrels of oil per day, which is an incredibly large amount. From what we understand, that means that there's a ticking clock pretty much on the Russian Federation that gives them about around to the end of this year. And if they don't come up with anything, their oil will run out. Just their refined fuel products will largely run out. The oil will never run out, at least from what we know, at least for the next few decades. But the actual usable oil products like gas, diesel, other things like that, that will start to run out towards the latter part of this year. And
Man, those oil prices and also those gas prices in Russia are probably going to start going through the roof like horrifically for the Russian population. Like, it's probably going to become super expensive to get gas.
It's going to become wildly expensive to get gas, and not only that, we may even see that personal vehicular transportation may even be completely banned by the Russian Federation. So that way they're forcing people on the public transport, which will greatly ration the amount of fuel consumption, and not only that, make sure that they can give more to the armed forces, which are currently fighting in Ukraine, and for the Russian government would be a strategic imperative to prioritize the fuel for. That would cause a lot of problems inside the Russian Federation. As a lot of people in Russia have now gotten some form of personal transportation, some kind of a car. And if they are deprived of the ability to use that car, that may start to cause a lot of unrest, and not only that, a lot of economic downturn as well, as that may also span over into the commercial sphere, greatly rationing the amount of fuels that transportation and logistics companies can use, or greatly increasing the price, meaning that Russian economic activity will begin to decrease, and because of that, that means that the cost of living in Russia and the standard of living will take an increase and a decrease, depending on which one we're talking about. The cost of living will increase. The standard of living, as a result of that, will decrease. This could cause the kind of social issues inside of Russia that start to tip the scales inside the Russian Federation, at least on a social or a political level, where Putin is not favored by the Russian public and may give an opportunistic underling the ability to rise up and possibly challenge the authority of the Russian government at that time. Although that's a little bit optimistic because we haven't really seen that opportunity arise even over almost 800 days of the war. However, at the exact same time, we have also been able to hear that Ukraine will possibly be doing a little bit more, as they say that Ukraine has fired its 30 ATACMS at Russian bases, and while ATACMS are not supposed to be used inside the Russian Federation, it is starting to show us that as Ukraine gets more weaponry and more abilities to strike into occupied territory and also Russian territory, they're going to be taking those chances to try and deal death blows to the Russian war effort. And a lot of people have been wondering, will this increase? Will this decrease? Or will it stay about the same in number? And a lot of people have been talking about this. In fact, loads of people have been talking about this, as this has really been the big question of the day. Will Ukrainian attacks start to ramp up like we saw today and stay like that at a regular, especially within the occupied territories? Or will this be a bit of a fluke, and they'll do this every once in a while, kind of like the Russians conduct their missile and drone attacks in waves? But Matthew, what are you thinking about it? What is everyone else thinking about that as well?
All right, so on this one, we asked the audience a question. We said Russian sources claim that Ukraine has fired over 30 ATACMS at Crimean bases in just the past 2 weeks. And what are your thoughts? 79% said Ukraine will increase these attacks even more, and only 7% said Ukraine is at max attack capacity right now, and 9% said they needed more info on that. And based on what we're hearing, Ukraine has absolutely blatantly ramped up their attacks on Crimea, and the Russian sources are saying they're being hammered by those Ukrainian missiles coming in. And it sounds like to me that Ukraine is simply just getting started, because we know that the U.S. delivered a pretty good number of ATACMS before the bill was passed in the United States to the Congress, and that gave Ukraine a good starting amount of ATACMS. And now we're learning that even more are going to be making their way to Ukraine. So logically, they are going to increase these attacks when they get more of these weapons. And I think that is a good thing because Crimea is still Ukraine's and they still need to take it back. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that Ukrainian attacks in occupied territories are certainly going to be increasing due to the amount of ATACMS that they've received and also the cost efficiency of using the weapon. In the past, we've seen that Ukrainian strikes have been fairly limited in their number and scope due to the sheer cost and the low availability of Storm Shadow and Scalp EG missiles, which cost approximately $3 million per unit. That is an incredibly high missile price. To put that into perspective, the ATACMS costs around $1 million to produce in field. And even in larger numbers and larger contract fulfillments later on down the line in history, that number was reduced to around $800,000 to $850,000 per unit, meaning that overall, on a scale of economics, to use the ATACMS missile, which does about the same thing that a Storm Shadow or a Scalp EG can, it's just that it's not a reduced visibility or stealth missile. There is a lot of potential there to be able to conduct more strikes and far more devastating impacts on the Russian armed forces than there has been in the past. Not only that, due to them being so cheap, and of course, someone out there is going to make the comparison to normal commercial economics. Go, $1 million is cheap. Where are you living? And it's not that. It's a military aspect of cheapness. But for how cheap the missile is, you can actually do a lot of damage and have a large number of them to be able to attack multiple different targets. This means that Ukraine will most likely be attacking Russian hubs inside of Luhansk, probably inside of cities like Mariupol and Melitopol on regular bases, and not only that, we'll be attacking inside of Crimea and the Kerch Strait as well, meaning that overall, the Ukrainians are getting a far larger ability to jeopardize Russian logistics and communications and also command lines, and this once again will be putting the Russians into a tough spot. It'll be a lot like, the best way I could explain it, the pogroms of the summer of 2022, which is what the Russians call the event where the Ukrainians ended up obliterating multiple Russian ammunition depots. In fact, it was such a large amount, it created a crisis in the Russian army as it pretty much wiped out their supplies over that summer. They had to try and find out what to do, and what they ended up coming up with is that they were going to move everything further back from the front lines, and that means that now we are in the present day. They moved all those supply lines and major hubs where they thought they would be out of reach of Ukraine, inside of the very southern area of occupied Ukraine, inside of occupied Crimea, and also on the very borders of Luhansk and Donetsk. They then have to truck forward all the supplies from these areas, which also puts a great strain on the Russian logistics compared to the pre-war, well, not the pre-war, but the early war Russian logistics structure. And not only that, causes a massive lag time in the kind of responsiveness that Russian supplies can have to the situation on the front. With the Ukrainians being able to use these ATACMS missiles, and hopefully have a large number of them, this means that the Russians will be faced with the same dilemma. Either they accept that they'll be losing a very large amount of supplies on a regular basis from these ATACMS attacks, which will become very common due to that fact, or they'll have to move the supply lines even further back and pretty much truck everything in from the Russian Federation in the supply hubs that they would build there and then into Ukraine. This also means that they're probably going to be getting a pretty interesting double-edged sword out of this, because the ATACMS can strike inside of Russia an incredibly far distance. But the thing is that the United States has told Ukraine that they cannot do that. They can only use the ATACMS missiles that they provide Ukraine inside of Ukrainian territory by its 1991 borders. This means that they can fire it into the occupied regions in Crimea, but they can't fire it into Russia. So if Russia makes the decision to move all of their supply hubs and major logistics lines back entirely into Russia and then just truck everything, meaning that they put it onto the supply trucks and drive it all the way from Russia and into occupied Ukraine, that means that those supply hubs will most likely, if not certainly, be safe from Ukrainian attacks beyond that point, and Ukrainian attacks will once again be greatly limited. But that comes with a severe drawback. If they do something like that, that means that Russian supply trucks will have to be undergoing the longest supply routes that will have ever been seen in a modern war outside of World War II. The scale of this would be unimaginable, because if they put a supply hub in Taganrog, let's say, and they're trying to move supplies to Avdiivka, to the Avdiivka battlefield, that means that those trucks have to take a round trip of around 85 miles. Which is mental. I cannot put that into words, how mental of a supply route that is. To put that into perspective, in World War II, there was a major logistical bottleneck that was created as Allied forces began to sweep through northern France and towards the area of Belgium. This logistics issue was unbelievably severe, as they were having to drop off all of the supplies to Allied forces in the area of La Havre and then try and truck them by truck forward from that area all the way through France, through muddy roads, through the Bocage, through winding roads that really couldn't handle the kind of traffic they were sustaining, all the way to the front lines. The distance of that line, when it was happening, and let me make sure to get this correct, was about a nice good about 160 miles, and that was set up with, later on, French railroads helping out, and also Calais being used as a port as well. And even then, with Calais being used, those supply lines were nearly 90 miles long, which is exactly comparable to the modern day supply line issues that the Russians would be having if they moved their supply lines back into Russia. It was such a freaking big issue for the Allies in World War II that they ended up coming up with something called the Red Ball Express, which was a way where they tried to streamline the supply lines as best they could, and not only that, try and make sure that the supply quotas per day were met in the area. It ended up hardly succeeding. And the Russians hardly have the logistical abilities that the United States even had in World War II, at least by number, volume, and all that stuff accounted for. They don't have that ability. So going off of that, while they may be able to protect their supplies, they're not going to be able to protect their troops on the front lines from running out of munitions and supplies, and also completely overextending their supply lines in almost every single area of the country. So overall, the Ukrainians are, with this kind of picture in mind, are certainly going to carry on their attacks with the ATACMS deep inside of occupied territory and force the Russians into making that deadly decision that will most likely doom the Russian army to being critically undersupplied and probably stagnating any kind of advances that they would be able to make if their supply lines were a lot more efficient and a lot more streamlined. So I hope that answers that question fairly well, at least in my opinion, with a very deep rabbit hole and analysis on that. And in case you all haven't been able to tell, I've had extra coffee tonight, so my brain is working at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's nice. I like it.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it, man. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to figure out how the bots are being stealth tonight. We've had 2 stealth bots come into the live chat. I could not see them for like the first 20 chats they put in, and then all of a sudden they popped up. I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm trying to figure it out.
Interesting. And Matthew, you make sure to keep an eye on that because Matthew is the first line of offense that we have against the bots. So good job, Matthew. Make sure to keep taking care of them and keep knocking them out. A true Lee Spring Army tradition. But moving on from that into our next bit of news, we also got to see that the Russians have gotten a Leopard 2 into Moscow, and they're going to put it on public display here soon. But what's crazy about this is that the Leopard 2 actually survived kind of largely intact. It's one of the ones that was abandoned near the Robotny front line back in the summer of 2023, and they finally ended up getting it into Russia. It's largely intact. That was a terrible voice crack, but it's largely intact. It wasn't really damaged much. What happened is that it got demobilized near the front line, and the Ukrainian crew operating the Leopard abandoned the vehicle, meaning that it's pretty much in a full running order and condition. The thing is, though, is that the Russians are about to put this on display to try and show it off to the Russian public and say how strong and powerful the Russians are, but the problem is that the tank is in too good of a shape. So they have to knock it a little bit out of shape. So what they did is that they brought in this massive weight here on a crane, and they're lowering it onto the barrel to see if they can bend the barrel and make it look like it's more defeated than it really was. So here's the clip of them trying to do this to the Leopard 2 that's in Moscow right now. And there goes the weight, which just ends up pushing the gun barrel down. And they have a long way to go.
Ага. Еще ниже? Максимум.
And we can see them pushing the weight even further down. And that barrel just ain't bending. No matter how much they did it, the barrel would not bend, because after a while, to explain what happened after the clip, the gun has such an angle of depression on it that the weight actually ended up slipping off the barrel, and they could not bend the barrel. So I guess this puts it into perspective. Superior Western engineering beats out massive Russian weight on a crane. It's a win-win for everyone, completely, 100%. But moving on from that, and out of that weird video of the Russians trying to do something for propaganda reasons, which is really sad considering it's completely see-through, it appears that their attempt to bend the barrel of that gun is something that it's been noted a little bit by Poland. It seems that Poland has become concerned by the overwhelming amount of Russian incompetence, and not only that, the massive movement of Russian nuclear forces in Belarus and the militarization of Kaliningrad over prior months, and they have now made an official request just today that they want U.S. nuclear weapons to be stationed inside of Poland. It's no longer something that's being rumored. It's something that it was being idly mentioned. This is something that Poland is actually working towards at this point. According to the news that we were able to get today from Visegrad 24, Poland has handed an official request to the to the government of the United States of America to have U.S. nuclear weapons hosted or stationed inside of Poland. This is a fairly big move because it is showing that the Poles are very serious about the wish or the want of U.S. nuclear weapons being stationed inside their country. It does have a strategic reasoning behind it. There is a method behind this request, is that right now, the current land war situation in Eastern Europe is one that is largely, the best way I could explain it, it largely favors no one. It would be a stalemate at the moment, at least at the opening of a confrontation. Western forces are not present in Eastern Europe in large numbers at the moment. They are there in larger numbers than they have been in the past, but compared to Russian forces in Kaliningrad and most likely in the area of the Leningrad military district, the number isn't that high. So it would actually be a par-on-par battle at the very beginning. However, once it moved on from a conventional war and started to move into the phase of, oh crap, the Russians are getting beaten pretty badly, the Russians are going to have a little bit of an upper hand at the moment with their tactical nuclear weapons stationed inside of Belarus, which are, they're not the massive nuclear missiles like the Topol-M, which are famous because those are the intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those are a strategic kind of a missile. What we're talking about are tactical nuclear weapons, which are bombs that would be used to be dropped onto large military groups in the area of Eastern Europe and try and destroy them decisively with one nuclear blast. That's the kind of weapons we're talking about. And right now, at the moment, the Russians have a decent amount of these inside of Belarus. So if this war started to go south for the Russians, if a conventional war did happen in the area, they would be able to mount these small nuclear weapons onto their aircraft, fly them at low level, they would then go up. Well, the way to explain it is that they would actually pull up really quickly, and they detach the bomb at that side at that time. And what that would do is that would lob the tactical nuclear bomb on its way towards its target. It would then land on a large army corps or an army group in the area and end up dealing a decisive blow to that unit. The thing is with that is that they have a very small amount of time where they would be able to conduct that. Right now, it's expected to be around an hour in between that aircraft taking off and that aircraft lobbing that tactical nuclear bomb at an army group in the distance. The issue with that is that the United States' response time at the moment to also do the same thing to Russian army groups in the area would be about 3 to 4 hours, given the kind of speed that the aircraft could travel and all that involved, and also refueling as well from the current positions that they're stationed inside of Western Germany. That means that our response time would be 4 hours. That means that if the Russians launched a tactical nuclear bomb, there would be a 4-hour amount of time where the Russians would have a complete advantage to be able to race forward and completely wipe out that army group that just got hit by a tactical nuclear weapon and advance onto those positions, meaning that the U.S. forces would be completely discombobulated. Reconnaissance would be next to none from the ground in that area. And that means that if a U.S. aircraft was to respond, we may be lobbing a tactical nuclear weapon onto an army group that has already moved far from that position, maybe dozens of miles forward. So Poland wants our tactical nuclear weapons moved into Poland, so that way, if something like that was to happen, instead of that Russian army group now racing forward into a gap in the front lines where that tactical nuclear weapon just blasted, the United States would be able to drop a tactical nuclear bomb directly back onto the Russian armed forces or the Belarusian armed forces and knock them out pretty much at the exact same time, meaning that it's a stalemate on the tactical nuclear weapon side of things, meaning that the Russians would be a lot less apt to pull out that idea out of the toolbox pretty much if a conventional war was to begin. So that's the situation that the Polish are requesting the tactical nuclear weapons to be moved forward into Poland under. So with that, I hope that does explain that whole entire saga fairly well, because some people have had a misunderstanding as to why the Polish would even want them there, because the nuclear weapons are already in Europe. Why move them to another location? And it's because it's not really like an intercontinental ballistic missile. It actually has to be carried to the battlefield and then dropped onto the Russians. So the response time that they can get is a massive factor in the equation. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about this request by Poland. It's a pretty wild one. It's the first time that Poland has ever requested for U.S. nuclear weapons to be stationed inside of their country. And a lot of people have been wondering, will the United States honor that request? Will they refuse the request and keep the nuclear weapons stationed in Germany? What will the United States do in response to this request by the Polish government? And Matthew, what is everyone thinking? What are you personally thinking about that as well?
All right, so we asked the audience on this question. We said Poland has delivered an official request to host nuclear weapons in Poland, and will the U.S. comply? 53% said the U.S. will honor the request, while 25% said the U.S. will refuse it, and 9% needed more info first. And I'm still of the belief that the U.S. and also the West has the full capabilities to destroy Russia if need be in a nuclear exchange without having to move weapons into Poland itself. And I still believe it's largely a political move if we were to do that. It really has no real difference on our ability to strike Russia with nukes. It simply sends Russia a very strong message that Poland is not messing around, and the West is also taking our security pretty seriously as well. So honestly, I think the U.S. is going to sort of like maybe stall on this request for a little bit. They may decide to consider it some more, but I really don't think they're going to honor it. I think they're going to refuse it in the end, or simply let it sit there and basically just stall permanently. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would believe that the United States is most likely going to honor the request, but a lot like you were saying, it's going to take them some time before they honor it. It's probably going to take a little bit longer. They'll probably wait for the situation to escalate further, because if the United States moves these tactical nuclear weapons forward now, the Russians are still going to treat it as some sort of an escalation, although the Russians did the same thing a little while ago. So going off of that, I would believe that we probably will follow through with the request. It's just that it's not going to be immediate. It's probably going to be within several months, probably towards the very latter end of the war, which we believe is going to be happening in the later part of this year, most likely near to the very end of the year at this point.
You know, another thing the U.S. could do is that they could wait and let this stall, like I was saying, and then use this as leverage later. So if Russia continues to escalate things, then they could say, we're going to grant Poland's request to put those nukes on their territory, since the request is sitting there stalled waiting for us to make a decision on it. That could be leveraged in the future by the West.
It could be leverage in the future by the West, or the United States could try this diplomatic play at the moment. They could immediately fulfill the request, move tactical nuclear weapons forward. The Russians will, of course, freak out, and that'll begin an armed escalation in between Russia and the West for a while. And then the United States could pull what the Soviet Union did in the Cuban Missile Crisis and say, hey, you know what? Why don't we all just step off? What if you move your nuclear weapons out of Belarus? We'll move ours out of Poland. Is that a deal? And then the Russians will probably go, that sounds like a deal. And they'll move their nuclear weapons back. We'll move our nuclear weapons back. And that means that, once again, if a conventional war was to start progressing in Eastern Europe, it would be an entirely conventional war and everyone would be on the same playing field. But the reaction times would be identical for the large part. It would take hours for a Russian tactical nuclear weapon to hit any Western forces within the area. It would be the same for the United States or the Western forces as well. But something else to point out about that is that the Russian Federation relies on the nuclear weapons. They've actually relied on the nuclear weapons all the way back from Soviet times. The United States hasn't really had a reliance on nuclear weapons the way the Soviet Union did, and you can even see that in the amount of nuclear weapons over time. And let me see nuclear weapon amounts over time. And I'll show you all this because this is something that is incredibly interesting to see in a graph. And let me see if I can show you all this right here. Here we go. So this is the graphs of nuclear weapons that have been stored and used by multiple different countries over multiple different periods of time. And it's something that is incredibly interesting to look at because you start to realize that the amount of nuclear weapons that people have is insane. You can see that in the 1960s and the 70s, the United States actually had the largest amount of nuclear weapons. But you'll notice that this little graph right here, the one that's in kind of a maroon color, is actually the Russian Federation in the modern day, but back in the day, that would technically be the Soviet Union. But the reason why the Soviet Union started to produce nuclear weapons in such large and astronomical figures, peaking literally almost at the collapse of the Soviet Union and then rapidly disarming itself, is because by the time of the late 1970s, the United States and the Western world as a whole were clearly going to outperform the Soviet Union in whatever they could produce at the time on the battlefield in a conventional means. And for that reason, the Soviet Union started to understand the only hope that we would have in the conventional war is to have a large amount of tactical nuclear weapons that we could deploy immediately and just start to nuke large army groups as quickly as we could, because that's the only way that the Soviet Union would be able to fight a major land war. And then that also ties in, and this will explain something else that's happened in the war that everyone's noticed forever. That's where the large amount of armored vehicles and armored personnel carriers tied in. Those were outfitted to be nuclear, biological, and chemical resistant to an extent. All of them were. And they would roll forward with the tanks and the APCs and mass armored waves into pretty much a radiated landscape that would be Western forces that had been completely destroyed at that point, mop up the remainder or engage in close combat where the West couldn't do the same thing to the Russians dropping a tactical nuke on them. And then they would decisively try and destroy Western forces and then rapidly advance into the void that exists pretty much behind them. That was the plan. That's why they had such a large amount of tactical nuclear weapons. And so even in the present day, because the Soviet Union realized this by the 1970s and 80s, even in the present day, the Russian Federation still understands, especially being a ghost or a shadow of the former Soviet Union, that the only way that they would survive a conventional war is to have tactical nuclear weapons. Very easily available to deploy on the battlefield, because that's the only thing that's going to give them the upper hand in engaging in combat with Western forces. It is a massive escalation, yes, but it's the only chance they have at actually trying to succeed on the battlefield. So going off of that, I have a feeling that even if we move our tactical nuclear weapons forward into Poland, they most likely will not step off of their stance of having their weapons inside of Belarus, because they know that if a conventional war did kick off, if they started it or if we started it, their only chance in hell of even surviving that conflict to get to Armageddon would be to use the tactical nuclear weapons first, or at least have an upper hand on using them. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well about the whole Polish situation of wanting to move them in, and also the response that the Russians would possibly have, because it's a really kind of a complicated answer, because nuclear diplomacy is a very hard field to actually understand, and it's almost completely different on each historical basis with how it works. But with that, I hope we were able to address that. the best we could. And it's now time for us to move on really quickly into another news segment. Before we start moving into the news from inside of Ukraine, there's been a decent amount of news that has come out of the Middle East today. Some very concerning news that shows that once again the kindling for war is still smoldering a little bit and may be sparked again here in the near future due to constantly rising tensions in the Middle East in between Iran and its proxies and the state of Israel. We've heard lately that a never-ending stream, which we haven't reported this on this channel, but we have been seeing it in the background and making sure to keep an eye on it, a never-ending stream of drone, missile, and artillery attacks by Hezbollah has been conducted against Israeli civilians and also the Israeli Defense Forces within the area of northern Israel. This situation has become so severe that the Israeli government has now made a demand that Hezbollah must remove all of its forces from Lebanon as a whole. They must withdraw completely from Lebanon, and if they do not, Israel will act against Hezbollah in all of Lebanon and occupy a large area in southern Lebanon to create a security buffer zone that will be controlled by the Israeli Defense Forces. So right now what we're hearing is that the ultimatum by Israel is that Hezbollah either moves completely out of the country, most likely into Syria, or Israel is going to invade the country of Lebanon, most likely occupy a large area south of Beirut, and create an occupational zone where they will control that region of Lebanon, and also try and continue to destroy any Hezbollah sites that remain within the region, and also create a larger defensive perimeter that they would have against Hezbollah. This is something that is very interesting because Israel is once again threatening, and this is something that the Iranians said would lead them to direct action against Israel again. They are directly threatening the existence of the largest direct action proxy group that the Iranians support. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is largely the logistics branch of Iran's terrorist forces within the region, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas all combined. So Israel directly threatening Hezbollah, which is the largest of them all, is something that is actually pretty inflammatory. If they actually follow through on something like this, and they end up invading southern Lebanon and dealing some crippling damage to Hezbollah, we may see that the fires of war begin again inside the Middle East, and direct actions in between Israel and Iran begin to resurface. This is something that I gotta say is very wild to hear, and once again is showing that things are certainly starting to escalate once more within the region. And at the exact same time, we were also able to hear that Israel is retiring some of its Patriot systems, the same Patriot systems that were used in the defense of Israel during the major Iranian attack that occurred several weeks ago, where we saw hundreds of drones and hundreds of ballistic and cruise missiles being fired into their region. We are hearing that they're retiring almost all of them, and they're going to be replacing them in the future with a combination of David Sling and Iron Dome systems to pretty much replace the Patriots, which is a little bit weird considering that the Patriot was kind of the intermediate-sized missile battery. The Iron Dome's a small size. David Sling is also a smaller-sized, I guess you could say, missile battery meant to engage smaller targets. And then you have the Arrow 2, which is the largest and heaviest of the hitting air defense systems that Israel had, and really filled in the role of hitting some of the largest missiles that would be launched into their territory. They're retiring the middleweight group, and they're now going to be replacing it with a hybrid of smaller-sized air defense systems, which is an interesting thing to hear. But we have heard that they may be selling these or donating them to Ukraine. And it's a may. It's not a certainty, and it's completely unknown at the moment. So we don't really know why there's a general reluctance by Israel to provide these systems to Ukraine, considering that they will be destroyed. If they're not given anyone, they'll just end up being destroyed. And that's something of a fallacy that a lot of people have heard about military tech, is that people give endless amounts of money to Ukraine to fight the war. The truth is, we're giving them an endless amount of equipment that we weren't going to use anyway, and the money had already been wasted on, just like Israel. This money has been wasted. This Patriot is not going to be tilling fields, and it's not going to be filing tax reports. This thing is going to be completely useless, and if they don't give it to someone, they'll just end up destroying it, because the money has already been spent on the system, and the money was a complete loss beyond that point. So they can give it to Ukraine, which means that they'll be giving Ukraine an amount of money, whatever the system is now appraised at, being this old. But nevertheless, once again, it is showing that the Ukrainians may have a possibility of getting an even larger number of Patriots from Israel on top of the ones that are going to be sent already by the United States and the ones that may possibly be sent by Europe as well. And this means that Ukraine may have more Patriot systems than they ever really wanted. But with that,
It's kind of weird. Like, I didn't hear it today at all. Israel did not mention giving these to Ukraine whatsoever. The suggestion has been made by analysts and also supporters of Ukraine. They've made that suggestion, but Israel has only said they're mothballing it. That's all they've said. And it's kind of weird, like the whole time, like you're saying, they could potentially end up destroying this equipment or not using it. And it really doesn't cross Israel's mind to actually donate the equipment to Ukraine. It's kind of odd.
it is really weird. I'm not gonna lie. It's incredibly bizarre because they're gonna mothball it. The thing is, people just don't get this about military equipment. When you spend the money to make a system like a Humvee, the Humvee is never going to get you're never going to get the money back out of it. Keeping it in America is completely pointless as well because if it's an older system, the military doesn't want to use it. They're not going to want it. I mean, that's why the United States military doesn't really use Humvees in a large amount anymore. They use them here in the States for the National Guard and for some very rear line roles, but for the large part, the combat utility vehicles these days are MRAPs, which are the next generation of vehicles. So we're not going to want to keep a lot of Humvees around. We're never going to use them again. And on top of that, we already spent the money on them. It's not like we're going to get money back out of them. It's not like you can literally just liquidate a Humvee from steel or in aluminum and just turn it back into cash. That doesn't happen. So you can end up giving it away to someone else who can end up giving it a second life or a second wind and get some use out of it and support an ally, or you can just end up destroying it. And those are the two options that Israel has faced for this system. And they're mothballing it right now. That's what the claim is. But mothballing is the ultimate end to is the lead up to the ultimate end, which is destruction of the system and not sending it off to a foreign country. So it would make no sense to mothball the system and not send it to Ukraine. It would make a lot more sense to send it to Ukraine and get a lot more favor with Western countries as they would be supporting a Western interest. They already have a decent amount of favor, so they may not even care about accruing more favor, but the fact still exists. If they're not going to use it, why not send it to Ukraine? Because it may as well be useless at this point, and they've already made it quite clear it's never coming back into service. It's going to be replaced with different air defense systems, and this is the end of the Patriot for them. So why not send it off to Ukraine instead? It makes really no sense to me, but that's what they're working off of at the moment. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and the current ongoing situation inside the Middle East, and we're now going to be moving on up into the Ukraine news, and we actually have a decent amount of it. But before we get to that, I do have to say something that's fairly interesting before we get all into the major Ukraine war news. Something interesting happened today. Kharkiv was bombed. And many of y'all who may watch the news on other channels, the ones that are largely weeping fests, y'all may see that this is a fairly common thing, that Kharkiv gets bombed. But the bombings that have been happening over the past few days have led to an interesting resolution. So I'm going to show y'all this clip. I'm going to show y'all the damage that has been caused to Kharkiv, and then I'm going to let y'all hear a shocking statement that was made today by Ukrainian investigators. So here's the clip.
Ман, который стоит вот здесь.
And what was this that was hit?
From what I understand, it was some kind of a residential area that was hit. One person was killed and 9 were wounded.
Давай зайдем. Да сейчас рукав надо продлить.
The damage to Kharkiv has been severe, and it's one of the most heavily bombarded cities inside of Ukraine. And not only that, it usually seems to have a lack of air defense around the city, which leads to a lot of the Russian attacks ending up being mostly successful in hitting their targets and ending up causing a decent amount of destruction and damage. But something shocking came out lately that has really blown away the world. one of the missiles that ended up hitting directly inside of Kharkiv and ending up causing a large amount of damage and casualties, like the attack we just saw, was actually a missile called the Hwasong-11 that was provided by the the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is called by many people around the world North Korea. This is an unbelievable revelation. This means that the Russians are actually starting to get and use, apparently in larger numbers as time will go by, North Korean weapons, not only of a simple scale, like the artillery munitions, which we know have a notorious bad quality. They are also getting missiles that are fairly comparable to the Iskander. This is actually what many people believe, at least on a surface level, a ripoff of the Iskander-M that North Korea produces. You can see here in the picture, the Hwasong-11 looks almost just like an Iskander. It may as well be a Hrem or a Grom as well, because the Ukrainian Hrem and Grom are also designed entirely of the Iskander-M for the large part. But what's shocking about this is that the North Koreans are selling these to the Russians. It's a very large and very expensive munition for the Ukrainians to produce, and the Russians are using it. Also, another thing that's interesting is that we have a couple of pictures here of the Hwasong-11 being tested, and this is the one right here that apparently hit Kharkiv. It was the Hwasong-11GA or the Hwasong-11A. This one is pretty much identical to the Iskander-M, meaning that it's most likely cross-compatible with Russia's Iskander-M missile launchers, and that's mostly likely why the Russians have been trading these with the North Koreans and now using them. This is also showing that the North Koreans are a direct supplier and contributor to the Russian war effort directly now. It's not just on a smaller level of 152mm artillery shells. They're now providing long-range weapons. This missile supposedly has a range of 590 miles to the Russians for them to use against Ukraine. This has led a lot of people to be pissed off with the North Koreans, and rightfully so. And a lot of people have been demanding that some kind of action be taken against the North Koreans for what has been done. And a lot of people are wondering what should happen to North Korea. Should we threaten the North Koreans? Should we sanction them even more than we have in the past? Although we pretty much sanction them every single way we can. Some people are saying that we should just ignore Korea and move on. North Korea and move on. A lot of people have been having a lot of different things to say. And Matthew, what have people been saying tonight, and what are you thinking about this as well?
Okay, so on this poll, we said the UN confirms that Russia used a North Korean missile to strike Kharkiv earlier this year, about in January or so. And what are your thoughts? 59% said more sanctions on North Korea, while 16% said we need to threaten North Korea, and 14% said it's about time we move on North Korea. So for the 14%, I'll say that moving on North Korea is probably not a good option because they do have some smaller nuclear weapons, and also China is basically protecting them. So it's sort of a bit of a tricky situation with that. And also Russia is now in a relationship with North Korea, so Russia and China kind of have interest in that state. So I don't think moving on them is a realistic option in my opinion. Honestly, more sanctions. North Korea is already sanctioned to the max, like the enforcer was saying. I'm not really sure what else we can do when it comes to sanctions to actually prevent anything from happening. And also threatening them pretty much goes unnoticed and unanswered as well because of the reasons about Russia and China supporting them. So I'm not really sure if there's anything we can really do about it except for basically issue diplomatic statements, which leaves us kind of with our hands tied to a certain extent. But Enforcer, what say you?
It's a really hard dilemma, and you were largely hitting everything on the nail the same way I'd say it. There's not really a lot we can do. We've sanctioned them into oblivion, so there's not really a lot more sanctions that we can put on the North Koreans because they're already on them. We can't really directly threaten them because a direct threat against North Korea will be backed by China. There is a defensive pact that has existed since the forming of North Korea way back in the late 40s in between China and North Korea. I believe it's called the Sino-Korean Friendship Agreement or something like that, which is a defensive pact where they say if the United States or South Korea attacks North Korea, China will immediately come to its aid to defend North Korea. And that still exists today, and from what we understand, the Chinese would most likely follow through with enforcing that treaty, meaning they would get directly involved in that war. So going off of that, we know that a direct confrontation with the North Koreans is not possible. They're also a nuclear power, so that would make things incredibly precarious considering how fragile the government is in North Korea. And we've already thrown all the sanctions in the book we can at them, so we're really limited on what we can actually do against them. Because there just isn't really a lot that we can do. We've already done everything just as them simply existing. Maybe, this becomes a really difficult thing. We're so limited. You have to end up doing things that would be covert, which would be really tough in North Korea, because the country is completely closed off, and anyone who is undocumented is already going to be arrested by the government. So it's really hard to get anyone in North Korea to do anything there. But there are a bunch of crazy things that you could end up doing that you would most likely say would be classified by the CIA for 50 years after the fact, and then they finally declassify, and you'd be like, they did what? You could end up doing some things. You could try and poison the groundwater, or you could try and completely make the land, the few areas of land in North Korea that are unairable through some form of means. But it would be really tough to do any of that. And also the kind of implications behind that would be quite severe, because that would be a pretty big humanitarian issue to end up poisoning a whole bunch of people in North Korea that really have nothing to do with the government, just because you're trying to get the North Koreans knocked out of the conflict. And I largely would not be of the idea of poisoning groundwater or trying to completely starve the North Koreans to death, because while that is really the only thing we have left, that is completely inhumane and barbaric. So you can't do that. And it would be tough. I saw John P. Seeger LSA say cyber attacks. That would literally only affect Kim Jong-un's Steam account. That would be the only thing that it affects, because there's nothing in North Korea that really runs on the internet. So it's tough. I don't know what we could do against the North Koreans at this point. Unless if it was completely clandestine and almost heinous. There's not really a lot that we could do against them at the point. And also, I want to make this
They could turn up those speakers. They could turn up those speakers at the border again and blast like Taylor Swift or something across it.
Man, no, man. Like, hey, I just met you, so this is crazy. Or something like that. Like something like that. But I don't know what you could do. And also, I want to make this very, very clear. I don't like when I was bringing up the clandestine things of poisoning the groundwater or trying to make the farms unairable in North Korea. I do not get behind those ideas at all. I'm just throwing those out because that's really all we would have if we wanted to do anything against them, because everything up to that point we've already done, and we can't directly militarily threaten them because it's not going to get us to the ends we want. It's going to be completely pointless. So I have to say, in my honest opinion, there's not a lot we can do against them. I guess we'll just have to accept that they're providing the Russians with weapons, and maybe. This is even tough too. I was trying to come up with another idea, and then I immediately shot it down. We could try and intercept North Korean ships, North Korean flagged vessels that are flying from other countries, that are moving from other countries back to North Korea. We could try and seize those vessels and impound them. But even then, that would be tough to do, because they would most likely have the security protections of the Chinese, and they would most likely also start to cause nuclear scares in the region as well if we did that. So it'd be really tough to do anything against them, to be quite honest. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, given the very precarious situation we have with them at the moment. But before we move on, I want to make sure that we move on into some questions, because we actually have a large amount of questions tonight. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so first up in our questions, we have one from Sylvester the Cat, the longtime channel legend, who throws in a $101 donation. And thank you very much, Sylvester, for that very generous support. And they said, hello, Matt and Enforcer, and hello, Sylvester. He said, exactly what indicators are you watching that suggest to you that the Russian war effort will collapse by the end of the year? And which trends should we be watching? And loose spring tanker since week 1. And great job, guys.
Hey, and thank you so much, Sylvester the Cat, for being an old guard Lee Spring tanker. And thank you so much for saying we do a great job. We try our best on this channel, and I made sure to overdose on caffeine tonight to make sure that it was going to be a very good news segment that was very well put together. You know, my mind would be moving at 100 miles an hour, so it had to be a good news segment. At least that's my logic. But to answer your question, there are several indicators that that can be looked at to see that the war effort will most likely come to an end by the end of the year. When talking about a country and its ability to sustain a war, there's not a single thing that is the lynch point of failure for a country. There's actually multiple different ones, and if any of those reach the very dead bottom where it can't go lower, the war will end. On a military level, that very dead bottom would be military equipment. If one runs out of equipment such as tanks, armored personnel carriers, artillery pieces, or ammunition, the war effort will end simply due to a lack of an ability to even field an army to fight a war. You can't move soldiers out there without weapons to fight, because those are literally just cannon fodder. They will die. They're pretty much pointless to send. So you can have an unlimited amount of manpower, and that's something that people don't get throughout wars. You can have a truly limitless amount of manpower in any conflict, but if you don't have the ability to arm them or field them as a fighting force, then you don't even have a way to fight. And that's why massive countries in the past, like China during the Opium Wars, which had a population that dwarfed the British Empire, ended up being defeated by the British Empire because they didn't really have the same industrial ability to equip and field a large army like the British did. And they also didn't have the technological advancements at the time either. But that's a whole historic rabbit hole to go down for another time as to why they didn't. But beyond that, from what we know, the amount of tanks and armored personnel carriers they have in reserve has been massively depleted over the past 2 years, and going on into this third year, they're depleting at an even faster rate. And so going off of that, we know that the Russians are probably going to run out of armored personnel carriers and tanks, maybe even by the later end of this year. And from that point forward, it'll be a very small trickle that's moving into the Russian armed forces. This means that in that one category alone, the Russians could end up losing the war by the later end of this year. That one actually may be stretched into early next year, but nevertheless, there's a very limited amount of time they have left to be able to have a usable, fieldable army at this point, given the amount of equipment that they'll be able to put on into the battlefield. The other thing that's really giving us a very good look into the Russian government possibly being forced to end the war is the economic situation that is also prevailing in Russia at the moment. The Russian economy has been severely hit so far by the war in Ukraine and has been going into massive economic recessions, really a depression, and not only that, the ruble is skyrocketing in value. And let me see here if I can get this for all of y'all. So, let's see.
Wait a minute, you said the ruble is skyrocketing in value?
The ruble is plummeting in value compared to the dollar. Sorry.
I was about to say.
So this is the last... let's see, 20 years or so? Yeah, it's about the last 20 years. You can see that way back in the day, the ruble in 2008 had actually reached a value of about 4 cents to the dollar, meaning that for 1 ruble, you could get 4 cents. That's not really a lot because a ruble is a Russian dollar. It's the actual equivalent of a dollar. Nowadays, in the present day, a Russian ruble is only about a penny, and it's been about that low for quite some time. It was actually a pretty big shock that the Russians cooked the book so well that the ruble for a short while almost got up to 2 cents. That was crazy. But at the same time, they can only cook the book so long, and the ruble has started to implode again and collapse inwards on itself. And this is giving us a very good look that the Russian economy is going through a massive recession, and it's not doing incredibly well, which is giving us an idea that major Russian industries may be on the verge of collapse. And we already know that they most likely are, especially at this point, because so many Russian heavy industries are starting to get hit, and we're also seeing that there's signs of strain due to worker strikes throughout Russia that are suppressed by the police because of lack of pay. So a lot of workers are not getting paid. Another factor that lets us know that the war will end is the ability to fuel a war. In the modern world, there are several things that constantly have to be supplied to a country to keep them running. But one of the most important ones is some kind of a fuel source. That could be coal. During the Industrial Revolution, it was almost entirely coal. But in the modern day, coal has been replaced by oil. Oil is the bloodline of every single country in the world. Every country has to have oil to sustain any kind of modern economic activity. The Russians need a large amount of it, especially when you're fighting a war effort. You need more than you ever need at any other point. And going off of that, the Ukrainians understood this and started to strike Russian oil refineries towards the latter part of last year and on into this year, and has led the Russians to start running out of oil. If the Russians run out of oil, there's simply no way to keep fighting a war. Absolutely none. Because they can't even, just to explain a couple of things that would completely cease, they can't drive trucks that could transport troops. They would not be able to operate tanks or armored personnel carriers on the battlefield or self-propelled guns. They wouldn't even be able to transport the artillery around, the towed artillery, because they wouldn't have the trucks to do it. They wouldn't be able to transport supplies to the army because most trains inside of Russia are not electric, and even then a lot of the Russian power grid is run off of oil power plants. Those power plants probably wouldn't have oil at that point. So everything inside of Russia, if they completely run out of usable fuels, will come to a complete stop. Or if it doesn't come to a complete stop, it'll almost be a near dead stop. At that point, the economy, which is already in a bad state, will completely collapse because all economic activity will cease because there's no way to transport anything anymore, which is a large part of economic movement. And not only that, the armed forces will completely stop fighting as well. Even if they have a small amount of equipment left, they will have no way to fuel it and run it. So for those reasons, all of those reasons, we know that the ticking time bomb that will lead to the Russians imploding and really having to end the war is at some point towards the latter end of this year. We may, in some instances, be stretched into the early part of next year. And when I say early, maybe February or March. But in my opinion, it looks like things are mostly going to be ending by late November, early December this year, because there just is no way that they can try and keep all of those things from imploding in between now and the end of this year, because it's just going in that direction. It appears to be inevitable at this point. And so I hope that answers that question incredibly well, Sylvester the Cat. A very good question. And thank you so much for the massive support. And those are the trends that you should be watching as well. The armored vehicle numbers, well, really not just the armored vehicle numbers, the army supply numbers, the amount of fuel that they have on reserve, the value of the ruble, the amount of surplus oil, if you can get a publicly listed number that the Russians have, their oil purchases from abroad. All of those things will be showing that they will most likely be collapsing. And at the moment, it looks like they're in the early stages of the end war, because they won't be able to keep it going that much longer. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support. You're helping to keep this channel running, Sylvester the Cat, and I can't thank folks enough like you who support this channel and help us to keep it running, because you help me to be over-caffeinated every single night and talk about the thing I love to talk about the most, which is events around the world and really the news. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the unbelievable, massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I was able to give an amazing amount of, like, I guess you could say, answers to that question. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next question is going to go to Snow White, yet another channel legend, who throws in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Snow White, for that support. And they said, "Hi, Enforcers. I happily got my mugs and cheers. And I thought the Gripens were approved and training was in progress. Was I dreaming this up? And as F-16s and Gripen are complementary platforms, and with war on Europe's threshold, what the what?"
What the what?
What?
What? Great question, by the way, Snow White, and thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for getting a mug. And I'm also, I'm also happy to hear it got there so soon, because that's one thing that's been great about the mugs, is that they get there pretty much before the limited edition run was even over. So we were really happy about that. And not only that, if you go to officialenforcerstore.com, you can get
shameless
one of these
plug.
mugs. Shameless plug, and thank you, Snow White, for giving me the moment to do this, because we have to plug it a lot tonight, because I want y'all all to know this is the last few hours you can get the mug. We are ending this limited edition run at the end of the stream tonight. So when you see the stream ended card, that was your last chance to be able to get the mug right then and there. Beyond that point, they just won't be around. They will never be around again. These are truly a limited edition item. They are $20 a piece, $20 per mug. You have an unlimited amount of them that you can get. They're made with a process called sublimation. I'm sure that many people can attest in the live chat, just like Snow White did in her super chat, that the mugs are incredibly high quality and they look incredibly good. Not only that, it has an 11-ounce capacity, and they are also microwave and dishwasher safe. On top of all of that, the ultimate hit on the nail is that 10% of the profits that we make off of these sales will be donated to United 24, which I feel like is a really good thing, because one, the merchandise item is not related to Ukraine at all. It's entirely Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army is the organization that exists here on this channel. It really has nothing to do specifically with Ukraine. It's really a worldwide organization that has to do with just supporting Western interests around the world. So donating 10% to Ukraine is an incredibly nice thing. It's just a little icing on the cake out of the whole deal. And so I hope that does address that the best I can with the mugs. Make sure to get one while you can. If you want to know where to get one, you can get it on officialenforcerstore.com. You can see that right up here, highlighted right there. Or you can go to the link in the description below, which is the same hyperlink. Click on it, and it will take you directly to this website where you can get it. Make sure to get them while the limited sale lasts, because it is ending today, and I want to make sure that everyone who can get one gets one, because we hate to hear that people cannot get them, and that's also why we extended the limited edition run, because it started on Saturday of the week before last, and it was supposed to only run up until the last Saturday, but then we extended it so that way people could still try and get them if they wanted to. So make sure to get them while you can, because tonight is truly the last night. But to answer your question, Snow White, now getting off of the Merciless plug, and I got to thank you for the support and also allowing me the chance to get into that Merciless plug. The Gripens, from what I understand, are not being provided to Ukraine. It was a thing that was in discussions for a while, but for some reason, the Gripens never ended up getting into that final stage where they would be sent. It is a cheaper, smaller, and much more versatile fighter than the F-16. Well, a much more robust fighter than the F-16, just due to the lack of maintenance that this thing needs, and not only that, the cheapness of the system in keeping it going. It's an incredibly cheap plane to keep flying per hour. And not only that, it can do all the things that the F-16 can do, it just does less of it. Like, for example, if you want to conduct an air-to-ground operation, it can do it. It's just that it can't carry the same amount of bombs that an F-16 could carry. But beyond that, it can do everything else that an F-16 can, just less of it at a single time. It also is easier to train on. It's also easier to get ground crews going, which for logistics is a miracle. So, going off of that, I would say it's a great weapon system. It's just that we don't know that any of them are going to be making it into Ukraine from what we know at the moment. It just appears that the F-16s are going to be making it. So I think, as far as the F-16 is going to be sent, well, actually, the Gripen's going to be sent, I think that actually would have been dreaming, I believe, Snow White, because it was dreaming on my end. I actually thought they were going to be sent as well, because negotiations looked like they were going really good, and then for some reason, it just ended. Like, it didn't fall apart, it just stopped. We don't know why. So great question. That would be a great question to answer. Why did it stop? Because we don't even know why that stopped, the negotiations at least. But that's what we understand at the moment. They are complementary platforms, and the Gripen could fill in the roles of F-16s along airspaces where F-16s weren't really needed, and you needed a lower amount of munitions to be dropped in a single area. You could use the Gripen. But sadly, we just don't know of any of these getting there at the moment. And I hate to say that, because they're an amazing plane. I would love to see them go to Ukraine, and not only that, it would help out the Saab company, which got obliterated in the export market. No one really wanted to buy these planes, and they were really made with export in mind. And it's kind of sad, because I think only Brazil... Let me see, what is the list of current operators of this thing? This is a very small list. It's like Brazil, Switzerland maybe. I think Switzerland even canceled their contracts for these things. Let me check. So it's Brazil, the Czech Republic, Hungary, South Africa, Sweden, which is the home country they come from, so of course they were going to buy them, Thailand, and the UK uses them in their Empire Test Pilot School, which is for training only, so they don't use them in any combat role. But beyond that, not a lot of people bought these planes, and there's not a lot of them out there in the world. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because folks like you helped make it possible, and I hope I answered that question the best I could. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting back into the news.
All right, so our last one of the segment is going to go to yet another channel legend, Walter A. Lakota Jr., who threw in a whopping $200 donation to the channel. And huge shout out to you, Walter. That is massive support, and we appreciate it very much. He says, Aloha, Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. He says, it seems that the summer is probably going a major turning point in Ukraine and Russia. And also the nautical fact of the night. He says, a flare is part of the bow on a modern ship, from the waterline up to the top of the bulwarks. And take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the unbelievable amount of support. Walter A. Lakota, the OG Ellison Bosun. Thank you for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And I gotta say, very cool naval fact. That is true. I actually knew that one, Walter A. Lakota. I'm happy to say that. And let me go pull up ship flare, and let me go.
I would say, Walter, you taught me something tonight, because I actually did not know that. I'm unlike the Enforcer. I've known nothing about ships and vessels, so that is brand new news to me. Not a vessel.
Let's see here. Arr, my boy. Let me go see if I can go get and find the flare, my boy. Arr. But let's see here. Dang. Oh, it's not going to show me this. Okay. Well, anyways, the flare is, and let me go make sure that I can find something to show about this. Let's see. Let's see here. So I
Is
guess
on
this
the Russian vessels.
Russian vessels. I guess this is the best one I could show, and this is what I understood the flare to be. So correct me if I'm wrong, and if this infographic is wrong. But the flare is where the ship kind of flares out, or it's the very front of the bow. And when I say that, this part right here,
Uh-huh.
the part that
I
sticks
see.
out from forwards, that's the bow flare. Or the flare can also
Interesting.
be
Also, I see there's also a boat called the MV Flare over there on the left too. I guess that's just the name of it, not because it has that. I'm assuming.
Man, that thing broke in half in the storm and went down.
Oh, really? You know
Oh,
the whole
yeah.
story of that boat?
Man, I know the whole story of the boat. It's like the Edmund Fitzgerald of the high seas, baby, split in half down to the bottom. But beyond that, I hope that addresses the flare side of things, the maritime fact, fairly well. And I also have to thank you for the massive support again and sharing that little naval fact with us. And also, I do think that the turning point will be this summer. I will have to say that the Russians right now are making small advances daily at massive losses. But I think that the Ukrainians, now that they're getting a large amount of U.S. support again, are going to stabilize the frontline situation and probably start to turn it around really quickly. And so, going off of that, I would believe that the Ukrainians will have this as a turning point. It's going to be a turning point in some way, because I feel like this is the end war for everyone. I think that Ukraine, to be quite honest, will not be able to carry on the war much farther into next year, and the Russians look like they're not going to be able to carry the war over into the next year at all. So right now, everyone's pulling out the stops to try and end this thing as quick as they can, in my opinion. So going off of that, I would have to entirely agree with you, Walter A. Lakota. It's going to be a turning point in the war, and I would keep a very sharp eye out to see who is trying to deal the largest amount of death blows at a single time, because that's showing either one other side is about to give out or the other. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much for the unbelievable support, Walter E. Lakota, and being an absolute Lee Spring Army legend, and not only that, the OG Ellison Bosun, which is a title that no one else holds in this Lee Spring Army except for you. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you made it possible for us to be around running this channel all the way up until that one time, just a Sunday, when we raised nearly $13,000 for Save the Children. It was crazy, and I'm so happy that people love this channel enough to support it like you do, Walter A. Lakota, because you certainly make it possible for us to live to see on this channel every single Sunday when those fundraisers go nuts like that, because those are really days worth of living for. They make me extremely excited to see that we're able to help out so much and continue to be a force of good in the world. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And I hope that does address that incredibly well, Walter E. Lakota. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into the Ukraine war news, and we do not want to know about the Creative Cloud, but we're going to be moving on into the location unknowns, where we got to see that the Russians got water from a puddle. And here's the clip. Look at that water, Bliet. He's like, it's delicious, it's nutritious, it's mother.
Oh, that looks great. That's literally gray water.
And he drank it because you're still not as strong as vodka, Bliet.
What the hell is that supposed to be? Like, what are they saying that is? Well, literally water?
Literally water.
My God.
Straight from the puddle.
That's straight mud.
Yeah. You know, if the idiots were a little bit smarter, they'd actually let that water sit there and settle for a little bit, so that way all the sediments would hit the bottom, and then they would try and find some way to filter it out or something. I mean, it's not that hard to filter the water. I mean, it's not. But they'd rather just drink the mud. So, hey, gotta say, they really are worms. They like dirt. But with that, that's the end of the clip, and we're now going to be moving on from that disgusting water and on into our next clip, where we also got to see that the Russians are now training their soldiers how to dodge the drones. I'm going to have to mute the music, but the clip is self-explanatory. Look at them. They're actually flying drones at them and making them think they have a chance at dodging an FPV drone.
Oh my God.
It's
hell?
It's like, you might be able to dodge this thing, but what if it has an RPG warhead on it that ends up blowing up like 3 feet away from you? Did it really matter if you dodged it?
And did they tell the guys that during this training that sometimes the drone actually hits you? It's like the drone just stops before it hits anybody in the training.
And it's like, also, most times you're not standing up when the drone's hitting you. You're either laying down or sitting down. So it's not really like you have this chance to run like this in the first place. This is stupid.
At least the training is pretty accurate, though. It has the low battery warning on the screen a minute to go for the drone.
Dude, they're like, bled. They hit them, bled. But with that, we're going to be moving on from this clip. There's not a lot more to explain. It was just Russian stupidity once again in its finest. And moving on from that into the next clip, we also got to see a Russian missile flying into Ukraine and then being chased right afterwards by a Ukrainian air-to-air missile. We can't really see the air-to-air missile on clip well, but listen for the boom, because that'll let you know when the missile flies by. There goes the Russian missile. And soon, here comes the air-to-air missile. And there it is. And there was the boom of the missile flying by as it goes to intercept the Russian missile.
That Russian missile was a slow chunker, but that other one was fast.
Oh yeah, man. Those air-to-air missiles like the R-73, they can get up to like Mach 3.5 at their fastest when they're at the height of their burn. But the cruise missiles, I think they only get up to like 560, 600 miles per hour or something like that. So that air-to-air missile is going to be catching up. It's going to be catching up quick. But with that, we're now moving on from that clip and on to our next one, where we got to see the Russian losses on a daily basis, summarized in a graph. This is an incredibly interesting graph. It actually puts it down into each month, how many days were in each month, how many losses were sustained that month, and then the daily average. Now we can see that the daily average has actually slowly been rising throughout the war. Here recently, the average in most months of 2024 has been hovering in between the mid 800s to the high 900s. So this is the highest sustained casualty rates per day in the war at this point. Is this crazy to see? Yes. Is this showing the Russians are getting really desperate? Yes, it does, because they're starting to really not care about the casualties, and they're just looking for progress, even more so than they did at the beginning of the war when we thought they were looking for progress rather than just, mitigating casualties. Now they're really starting to want progress at the complete disregard of casualties. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little infographic and moving on into the Russian casualty report, which has a lot to show today.
Oh, juicy, man. 3 Bobcats. And also, like, the losses, like you said, they're going higher every day. It's 1250 today. That's huge.
I mean, it's high. It's incredibly high. And 3 Bobcat skid steers destroyed even higher. But beyond that, like Matthew was saying, 1,250 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours alone. Insane. 39 armored personnel carriers were also destroyed, along with 33 supply trucks, 22 main battle tanks, 26 artillery systems, 3 drones, 2 MLRSs, 2 cruise missiles, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, the losses were insane today, and it's really showing that the Russians are in a bad spot as far as trying to keep fighting the war, and it shows that they are trying to get desperate advances or at least achieve their goals before they run out of the ability to even fight a war at all. Moving on from that and on into the rest of our news proper tonight, it is time for us to move into the area of the Kremenna Forest, where we got to see that the Ukrainians ended up hitting some Russian forces. Excuse you? I don't want my eardrums blown out. Bada boom, chugga chugga blit.
There were some fiery bits all over the place too, little bugs.
And we see the Ukrainians right here filming from their trenches, wandering around even.
That kind of looks like a hellscape a little bit.
Just a little bit, just a little. We now see them moving along down the tree line. Look at them go.
Oh,
Oh.
they're being watched.
You know, Matthew, I think that may have actually been the Russians. I'm not entirely sure, because this is a Ukrainian drone viewing them, but at the same time, it's really weird for them to have Russian POVs to use. So, not really sure if these are Ukrainians or Russians we're seeing here in the film. And they're also not wearing armbands either, so it's really hard to tell.
I think these might be the Russians on the ground.
I don't know. Good question. It's a good conundrum. We don't know who these are. Like, really. Let's see. Are they using AKs or ARs? It looks like they might be using AKs. They're moving through a trash heap, so they might be Ukrainians coming up on a Russian position. And we see a drone.
Oh, wait a minute. You can see that? You can actually see the drone flying around the sky, like from that POV on the ground, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was like a little dot that went above their head a minute. Like, you'll see it in a second.
They're firing now. So I think these are the Ukrainians. They're assaulting a Russian position. It's just not really like the movies, you know, like where they run up onto the position. They kind of just like sped walk onto it, and then they start firing on them. But it still works, and that's what counts. And we can see them lobbing grenades into the trenches, moving on forward, getting down in there. They're starting to clear it out. So these are certainly the Ukrainians we're watching on film. And here comes a Russian prisoner. He surrendered immediately. We see the drone flying around overhead. We now see the Ukrainians getting out of the trench with prisoners now. And we now see a fire breaking out on the trench. And we now see an explosion on the trench. It appears to be some kind of a white phosphorus explosion or a smoke grenade, possibly. Can't really tell for certain. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but showing a little bit of action by the Ukrainians in the area of Lyman, or really the Torskay area. But moving on from that and out of the area and a little bit further on down and into the area of Bakhmut, we were able to see that the Russians attempted an advance on Chasiv Yar and ended up taking some pretty significant losses. We can see that the Haus is a very common tank these days on the battlefield. They're starting to modify pretty much all of their remaining main battle tanks to be Hauses, so that way they can try and protect them against drone attacks a little bit better.
So far, haven't most of the Russian Hauses, haven't they been pretty much destroyed, except for just a handful of them?
Pretty much. Like, it's not really helping them much, but
Yeah.
it's giving them a sense of security, I think. We see that one firing, and you see that they actually have to end up nowadays just pointing the whole tank directly at the target to be able to use it anymore.
That's so stupid. It looks ridiculous on the battlefield.
And in everyone's field of view, the commander's field of view is completely screwed. He can't see anything now but direct front. But that's the end of the clip. And showing once again another Russian assault towards the area of Chasiv Yar. Moving on from that, we also got to see that the 17th Kryvyi Rih Tank Brigade repulsed a Russian mechanized assault in the area as well. I bet you there's music. Yep. All right, so here's the 17th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. We can see the Russian advance coming down the road. They don't have a house in the unit, so these guys are a little bit out behind the times. We see them advancing. We see that they're now starting to bottleneck. One of them just got hit. We now see them advancing a little bit more. Oh, another good hit. Another solid one. And we see another vehicle getting destroyed right there. They just pointed that one out. They said, it's been destroyed. Yes, soy. Let's go. And we see another armored personnel carrier moving around the fields. It appears that it may have been hit. A boom, a jigga jigga, brilliant.
Someone said, why do they call it a house? It's spelled H-A-U-S. It's sort of like referring to the German mouse, M-A-U-S. I think it was spelled something like that. It's it's like a ode to that ugly beast.
That terrible monster that the Germans so built and only made one that was a shell of a tank. But nevertheless, we can see the Russians laying down a smoke screen, probably not by their will, but their take is now a moving smoke screen.
Man, that's a lot of smoke for a smoke screen. I think that's some smoky engines.
Man, you were right on the nail. Look at that. Those are some nice smoke screens right there. A little toasty. Toasty indeed. The Russian came in and insulted our intelligence, saying, they'll reach Lisbon if you even know where that is on a map. It's like, huh. Dude, Russians don't even know where the hell they are because they're so drunk most of the time. So why in the world even insult me like that? It's like, even the Russians know. They're too drunk to even know they're in Russia right now. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see that a Russian BMP was captured today by Ukraine. Cope cage galore. We can even see a TM62 anti-tank mine mounted to the side of the BMP. I guess that's like for a self-destruct feature. You can run up to it with a sledgehammer and hit it to blow the tank up. But beyond that, still pretty nice. Nice to see they were able to capture it.
Oh. The Russians must be so worried that now that their prized vehicle's been captured here with a cope cage on it, the Ukrainians are probably going to steal their secret, like tank technology. You know, these cope cages will probably steal the secret.
Man, you know they will, man. And it's just nothing more than chain link and rebar, my boy. But moving on from that and down into the southern area around Klishkivka, we also got to see some more drone attacks being conducted by the 92nd in the area today. Check this clip out. I'm sure many of y'all will like it. Funk begins to play. There's that BMP-3, and it's about to get funked up. You know what I mean? Oh, there's a house. Boom, it got hit. Bada boom, it got hit as well.
It's just a montage of success. The Ukrainians have so much of it they have to make a whole compilation.
They're winning so much, they're going to get tired of winning. But anyways, you can see them continue to get hit. Ooh. And another one. Ooh. Tough times for the Russians. Good times for Ukraine. When you see this one going into a burned out BMP looking for any stragglers. The Russians like, oh, please, I'm a straggler. So he got it. He got it. So here comes the next one. Just going to clear out the rest of them just in case. And you see this one going for the Russians under the BMP. And we can see that at the end of the day, they got 2 BMP-3s, 1 BTR-80, another BMP-3, 2 T-72s, and a whole bunch of orcs. But moving on from that and on into our next clip a little bit further south of Bakhmut, we also got to see that down near the Avdiivka area, a grad barrage, a massive grad barrage was conducted by the Ukrainians. It was the biggest you ever seen. Some people looked at this and they said, wow, that's a big grad barrage. Really the biggest, the greatest. I make the greatest grad barrages. They are truly the finest and the grandest. But here's the clip.
Damn.
That's a lot of grad.
Man, the great leader Kim Jong-un be watching this and going, oh my God, that is so great. If only I could do that.
Man, you know what's about to be happening soon. You're about to hear Kim Jong-un say, we got to do that. And then you're going to be hearing, you know, like the very energetic news reporters, they show the clip of the massive rocket barrage. They're going to be doing this next. Money is on it, man. Like,
if North Korea did this, they would be broke in days.
Dude, if North Korea did this, dude, they would like if the fires alone from the exhaust of the rockets firing from the grad would end up destroying all of the usable farm fields left in North Korea. If they did that, they would be like, dang, now we going to starve to death. Like, we are actually going to die now because of this. But moving on from that and down into the area of Krasnoyarivka, we got to see that the BMP-T Terminator was disabled today near the area. Ooh, baby. Look at that. Isn't that nice?
После жесточайшего боя.
And we hear a grad firing in the distance in this clip, actually. But there's the BMP-T
По
Terminator.
крыше тоже что-то въебало. Повезло, что гусеницы не сбили.
Nekrasovshimya и Legendaria. And it was completely destroyed. Very sad, very sad. Sad day.
Здесь тоже прилетело нормально. Динамическая защита спасла. положила пластину. А машина вывезла из боя.
The Terminator was terminated. It has happened. But with that, now, wait a minute. Hang on. Can you believe this, Matthew? Someone is coming in here as a pro-Russian bot, and their profile picture is the flag of East Germany. Like a literal commie shield right there. Like, I've never seen a communist literally, like, can you believe that? Can you
Where
believe?
are they?
Let's see. I'll get him. I'll get him. Dude, that one actually blew me away. Like, being the most open about it as possible, a true commie through and through, with the flag of East Germany as their profile picture. How sad do you have to be? Like, shilling for a country that doesn't even exist anymore because it sucked that bad. It literally sucked so bad, everyone in it wanted to become a part of West Germany, the more successful Germany. Like, you can't even make this crap up for these shills. That's how delusional they are, is that they would actually shill for East Germany, a country that has not existed for about 40 years now.
Man.
Sad. That
Mr.
is so
Volti, he's crazy. He's crazy, Mr. Volti.
crazy, like freaking nuts. I'm not even lying. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on. I'm sorry, y'all. I actually had to take a moment to look at that bot and marvel at the stupidity of shilling for the Russians and what they think is communists when the country that they're shilling for literally doesn't even exist anymore and never will. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Krasnoyarsk area, it's time for us to get on into the south, where we got to see near Zolotaniva today that the Ukrainians were destroying some Russian air reconnaissance drones. Oh, what happened, Jack? You scared to watch the drones get blown up? Put an LSA in the chat if you like democracy. Put an LSA in the chat. Oh, and there goes the Strela. Strela! And there goes the drone. It was shot down successfully. And look at that. They got the little itty bits and
Just in
pieces.
chunks.
And that's the end of that clip, but wonderful to see. We're now moving on from that and into our next clip near Vishnia, where we got to see the 44th Brigade was destroyed. Oh, we got to see that the Russian turkey got roasted, baby. Oh! And we see the 44th Artillery just really giving them the artillery, the big guns, hitting them everywhere, destroying them, knocking them out. And I love to see the LSAs in the chat. Love to see it. You know what? I'm going to put in a couple of LSAs too, because I'm feeling the LSA spirit. Because the LSA spirit never dies in the Leaf Spring Army.
Man, I think between you and me, I think we're pumping in a pretty good amount of LSAs into the chat.
But with that, that's the end of that clip. Nice to see the 44th Artillery Brigade doing their thing. And with that, we're now going to be moving on down to Huilopol, where we also got to see the 43rd Brigade's peon moving around. Check that out. Isn't it something? Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it such a big artillery piece? Look at these guys. Heroes of Ukraine through and through operating the artillery. Wonderful to see. Moving on from that down to the area of Cherivne, we also got to see an AS-90 in service as well, the Western equivalent. Look at it. Isn't it cool? It is a cool tank, an amazing one, an incredible SPG. Moving on from that and down into the area of Rabotny, we also got to see how Russian columns are defeated by Ukraine. The amazing United 24 went into this in great depth. So, without further ado, here is the video by United 24. as we see here, the Russian column is continuing to advance forward.
Oh, that must be the guys off.
Say what? I can hardly. Wait, oh, wait a minute. I know why I can hardly hear you. I had the volume all the way down because this music is loud as hell.
I said they almost threw those orcs off that vehicle right there when they went down the hill.
Man.
Also, this music though, this music is like crazy loud.
Dude, it's insanely loud, man. I'm like, oh my god. Like, I have the volume almost down to nothing, and it's still hard to hear you over it. I'm like, dang. Dude, that's what the
We'll
cat
probably
sounds
get hit with
like.
a legendary copyright strike for this music.
I mean, we might actually. You know what? I'm gonna play it safe. You know, it's a little late now, but I'm gonna play it safe.
Man, we done played their whole EP already.
Man. Well, we gotta play it safe
Needing it
now.
now.
I just didn't think about it, you know? But that's no excuse. But anyways,
Went from that deep funk down to nothing. What is that junk flying through the air that I just saw?
oh, those are rounds.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Oh wow, look at that. It's like, yeah, it's like that's rounds.
There you. Damn, man, you gotta suck
Man,
down
my
the esophagus.
esophagus. My
But Barry
esophagus.
Dadrill said, Barry said, "Whoa, you sound like Yosemite Sam right there." I said, no, that's Rooster. That's
Foghorn Leghorn,
what the
damn
hell
it.
is it? Yeah, Foghorn
That's
Leghorn.
not Rooster Cogburn.
Rooster Cogburn again.
That's John Wayne, man. That's John freaking Wayne. Like, oh my lord.
Howdy, Pilgrim.
Howdy, pilgrim. You wanna get yourself blown to kingdom come? Well, join the Russian army. Or whatever. Yeah, but anyways, we can see them firing on the Russians.
That's probably what the Russian recruiters are saying too. Join the Russian army or whatever.
Yo, wait, howdy, pilgrim. The Russian Empire is kinda chill. Maybe you should join or something. Something like that. Oh, what the hell? Dude, that thing just climbed like a whole freaking ditch, like a river.
That was actually kind of impressive, actually.
That actually was kind of impressive,
Damn.
I'm not gonna lie.
They're just gonna plow their way through all the crap.
Yeah, you're gonna bump its way through. Man, that thing was literally bumping through. I was like, damn. Bada boom, baby! Nice. They got blown up. And that's the end of the clip. Y'all know the 3D printer noise started playing right there. It went or something like that. But that's the end of the clip. Nice to see. And of course, huge credit to United24 for making that small video documentary. Moving on from that, we also got to see that a Buke system was destroyed. Oh, we're going to be muting that. But there's the Buke, and it got hit, and it immediately started roasting.
Man, I just gotta say, I always gotta comment on these unit emblems, but go back for a second to that unit emblem in that video.
Let's see here. What we got? Man.
Why is it look like this tiger's spitting out? Let's go on.
You know what it looks like to me, man? It looks like it stuck its tongue out and went, something like that. It's like they look a little wild up in here, you know what I mean?
Looks a little crazy.
Hey, it look a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie, it does look a little crazy. But moving on from that, and on into the area of Kherson, we were able to hear that apparently a Russian attack was repulsed today. The Russians tried to take back the island of Nestria in the middle of the Dnipro Reservoir. The Dnipro estuary, and they were completely repulsed twice. So, massive success by the Ukrainian armed forces, once again showing that they hold the lands. And moving on from that and moving up into the city of Kyiv, it is now time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 797 of the war. And so, without further ado, here's the speech. And it's a long one, folks, so you best strap in. It's going to be long. It's going to be arduous. Let's see here. Subtitles in English. Everything looking good to me. All right. Here we go. Yay.
Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні передусім наша вдячність кожному воїну Державної прикордонної служби України. Сьогодні їх професійний день. Це тисячі фахових воїнів, дійсно хоробрих людей, які не лише захищають наш державний кордон, але й разом з усіма силами оборони та безпеки України б'ються на фронті, в тому числі на найбільш гарячих напрямках. І б'ються дійсно героїчно. Дякую кожному солдату, сержанту, офіцеру та генералу Державної прикордонної служби України. Усім підрозділам, які знищують окупанта та оберігають наші громади у прикордонні від російських терористів. Кожна знищена російська ДРГ, кожен відбитий російський штурм – це наближення того дня, коли дійде навіть до божевільних в Кремлі, що їм не зламати Україну. Я хочу зараз особливо відзначити підрозділи та воїнів нашої Державної прикордонної служби України, які саме цими днями, цими тижнями проявили себе в боях. Луганський прикордонний загін, бригада «Помста» і особливо сержант Антон Кирилов, старший сержант Василь Лусків та старший лейтенант Сергій Незговоров. Я дякую хлопці. Донецький прикордонний загін, солдати Ярослав Федоренко та Денис Яблінський, старший солдат Олег Зімірський. Дякую. Південь нашої держави. Воїни Херсонського прикордонного загону, солдат Сергій Троценко, сержант Юрій Швець, старший сержант Антон Канівець. Дякую. Бердянський прикордонний загін, особливо сержант Дмитро Мануїлов та старший лейтенант Сергій Перетятко. Молодці, наші воїни прикордонної служби з підрозділів морської охорони. Дякую всім вам, а особливо заслуговують вдячність матрос Артем Назаренко, старший матрос Валерій Луценко, головний старшина Юрій Петрик та лейтенант Антон Конученко. Також Чернігівський прикордонний загін, воїни якого воюють на Новопавлівському напрямку і дійсно результативно. Солдат Анатолій Романченко, штаб-сержант Костянтин Мельничук, головний сержант Денис Бортний. Дякую вам за хоробрість, хлопці, та усім вашим побратимам. Напередодні я підписав і кілька указів щодо Державної прикордонної служби України та її воїнів. Відзначив званням Герой України, майстер-сержанта Олега Пришневського та підполковника Дмитра Олексюка. Дякую, хлопці. Також підписав указ про відзначення державними нагородами, Хрестом бойових заслуг, орденами 271 воїна-прикордонника. Також підписав Закон України про збільшення штатної чисельності Державної прикордонної служби. Це відзнака державою вашої ефективності, воїни, у захисті України, нашої незалежності, життя наших людей. Дійсно, ефективні структури у силах оборони та безпеки України заслуговують на нарощування і поширення їхнього досвіду в інших елементах нашого війська. Сьогодні було протягом дня багато нарад саме на військову тематику щодо ситуації на фронті, наступальних дій окупанта і наших дій. І для того, щоб зірвати російські задуми, і для того, щоб досягти наших завдань, була доповідь головкома Олександра Сирського. І ще окремо обговорили з міністром оборони Рустемом Умєровим постачання зброї і комунікацію з партнерами. Нам потрібне суттєве прискорення постачання, щоб відчутно посилити можливості наших воїнів. На фронті мають домінувати не російські авіабомби і штурмові дії, а наша українська ініціатива, наше ППО, наша артилерія, наші дрони. Частково ми це вирішуємо завдяки нашому виробництву і кожному та кожній, хто допомагає силам оборони. Особливих результатів вдалося досягти щодо дронів. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто працює заради цього, хто виробляє дрони, хто тренує операторів, постачає все необхідне. І дякую кожному з партнерів, хто у цей час робить дійсно все, що може, аби зміцнити наші позиції. Дуже розраховуємо на оперативність постачання від Сполучених Штатів. Це постачання, яке має відчуватись у знищеній логістиці окупанта, у їхньому страху базуватись будь-де на окупованій території, а також у нашій силі, у силі, що має показати себе і на Покровському напрямку, і Курахівському, Сіверському, Лиманському, Куп'янському, на півдні держави, всюди, де Росія тисне і де ми її маємо витиснути. І також всюди, де можуть бути нові удари, ударні загрози. Ще одне за сьогодні була доповідь прем'єр-міністра України Дениса Шмигаля. Обговорили деталі щодо постачання зброї та снарядів, відповідної роботи з партнерами. Прем'єр-міністр прозвітував про перемовини щодо цього, про реалізацію рішень. Зокрема, я хочу подякувати уряду та особисто прем'єр-міністру Чехії за пришвидшення реалізації артилерійської ініціативи. Також детально проговорили сьогодні і підготовку до першого саміту миру. Роботу, зокрема, з державами глобального півдня. Урядовці, наші дипломати, Офіс президента, всі разом працюватимуть, щоб якнайбільше лідерів та народів могли проявити себе у роботі щодо миру. Також обговорили роботу на європейському напрямку, підготовку рішень, які очікуємо у червні, фактичного відкриття переговорів про вступ України в Європейський Союз. Це те, що дійсно потрібно, і з нашого боку все готово. Дякую всім, хто б'ється та працює заради нашої держави і людей. Я дякую всім у світі, хто з Україною, усім, хто допомагає вчасно. І саме так, як треба, щоб перемагати. Слава Україні!
And
Heroam Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 797 of the war. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment, where we get to talk to all of y'all. Every single one of y'all. The folks who've thrown in the super chat, the folks who've thrown in a live chat. Hopefully, we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. But before we do, there is one big thing that I have to make sure to tell all y'all about one more time, because it is something that will be so important tonight and never important again. It is the Lee Spring Army mugs. These mugs.
Oh, the mugs!
These mugs will only be around until the end of the stream. And to be quite honest with y'all, I think this stream is probably going to be running for about another hour. So pretty much at the top of the hour, here in about 50 or so minutes, we are going to be rounding out this limited edition LSA flag mug. This will never be on the merch store, probably ever again. If it is, it's going to be years from now. So if you want one of these things, make sure to get one, because they aren't going to be around again. There is no limit. They are $20 a mug. And not only that, they are made with a process called sublimation. We actually have some of these mugs here. And I got to tell y'all, they are truly fantastic mugs. They are unbelievable mugs, because the print is not like printed onto the mug, it's printed into the mug. It also is pretty much glossed over as well, so the whole entire thing is protected. It is dishwasher and microwave safe. It also is an 11-ounce size mug, which is fairly big. You can fit any kind of drink you want in there. You can fit tea, coffee, water. You can fit a Propel, which is what I'm drinking right now. You can fit a Gatorade in there. I mean, you can fit all kinds of things. Hell, you can mean mug people with this thing if you want. It's a mug, damn it. You can do whatever you want with it. But if you want to get one of these, go to officialenforcerstore.com up here at the top, or go down in the link in the description below this live stream. Click on that to get your LSA mug here. That's what it says right above it in all caps. Go click on that link, and it will take you directly to this website where you can get the mug. Ordering is easy. You just add as many of them as you want to the cart, and you get them here on your way to your house. A lot of people have already gotten them. A lot of people in the chat are saying that they're incredible and they're very nice. And hell, y'all could put whatever y'all want in them. Some people said some folks have put soup in it. All right, that's kind of weird, but I'll get behind that. Someone said nipple flavored Gatorade. You had to bring that up, didn't you? You had to.
Oh,
you
man,
had to
that's been a long time since that was brought up.
That has been a million years. JD Macco, I want you to go. I'm just kidding. But you can put that in there if you wanted it. You can also put cereal in it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could do it. You could do a mug float. Now that's pretty normal. And let's see what else. You could put you could put soup in it. You could put hot dog in it. I wouldn't put hot dog water in it.
No, don't put hot dog in it. That's banned.
Someone said big enough for a beer. I mean, you could certainly put a beer in it, no question. I mean, that's not even bizarre or even freakish. Even that's actually kind of reasonable. And let's see here. Someone said moonshine. Well, you could put that in there. I mean, I feel like 11 fluid ounces of that would kill a bear, but you could put it in there. And let's see. Propel has
put some of that Jack in it too.
You can put ramen in it. I don't know what
ramen.
Someone said ramen. You can put ramen in it, Space Cat. I don't know if that would be normal to put that in the mug, but you can put it in there. Anything that is a liquid, you could put in there. You know, Tears of Russian Bots, you can put that in there. You could put you could put anything in there. I mean, let's see. You can make a mud cake. Scrambled eggs. Yeah, why not? Borscht? Sure. Let's see here.
You can even put some of that Russian mud water in it.
Yeah, you could put Russian mud water in it. You could you could do anything with this. Ice cream, that's a great idea. And
mice cream, that's right.
Mice cream. It's made of mice. Kool-Aid. Me personally, I like the red Kool-Aid the most. But yeah, you can put that in there. Also, what the hell is blue flavored Kool-Aid? Like, what is that even supposed to taste like? Does anyone realize like
it tastes like blue?
Yeah, it tastes like blue. There's like it's not even like similar to anything because like red's like strawberry. Like you can kind of draw the similarity there a little bit. But blue, it's like, what the hell is this? This is not a blueberry or anything. I don't even know what this is. But it's not bad flavor. But you can put that in there too. You can put Jameson in there, juice, shrimp cocktail, Spam. I think that's kind of pushing it, even for me. But beyond that, you can put anything in there. And also, good job, Will Callaghan. Glad to hear you also got your LSA flag today. Because some of the international orders have been traveling. I mean, they've been traveling a while. I'm glad to hear that a lot of folks are finally getting them lately. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because these mugs are incredible. They're going to be gone before you know it. I mean, they're going to be gone tonight. So if you want to get one of these things, or if you want to get a lot of them, you got to get them tonight, because after tonight, it's over. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to get on into those questions extraordinaire. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our last question segment of the night, we actually have a poll to address. And this one says, Israel's retiring its Patriot missile systems, but it won't commit to donating them to Ukraine. And what are your thoughts? 45% said Israel will give them eventually. 25% said Israel is going to be greedy and hold on to them. And 17% said, there are other reasons. And in my opinion, I'm really having some doubts as to whether or not Israel is going to give these to Ukraine. I think they might want to hold on to them for whatever reason and not donate them. I'm really not sure why they wouldn't actually donate them to Ukraine, though. That would be the right thing to do. But I have a odd suspicion that they're not going to do that, and we really don't know why they're not going to do that. But on that one, I'm just really not sure. I really don't have that much else to say about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I would hope in my mind that Israel would eventually give them to Ukraine. But the reality is Israel hasn't really given much to Ukraine in the first place. And so I would doubt that they'd actually give it to them. But I would be pleasantly surprised if they did. I'm not going to hold out. I'm not going to withhold hope. I'm going to say they will give it to them. It's just going to be time that we're going to have to wait to see them get there. I think American patriots will get there before European or Israeli patriots will get there. But if they can get all three of them to send them patriots, that's more the merrier for Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, Matthew, we got some questions. So what we got, Matthew?
So jumping back into our Super Chat questions, up first we have one from Arthur, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Arthur, for your support. He says, once again, thank y'all for everything y'all do. And thank you, Arthur. He says, and he said LSA, by the way. He said, also my question is, do you believe Russia will attack from northern Unis again soon? I think he meant to say Ukraine on that one. He said, second, will Israel move into southern Lebanon to handle Hezbollah in the near future?
These are incredibly good questions. These are the kind of questions that keep me up at night. They actually do. And make me wonder, what will happen? So, Arthur, you've got some amazing questions there. So, first off, will Russia attack from northern Ukraine soon? No. They will probably never attack anywhere outside the southeast again, because right now they don't really have the ability to raise a new army and also begin any kind of momentum up in the northeast anymore. They've kind of lost the element of surprise, and that was kind of the reason why they conducted a northeastern offensive in the first place. And now that element of surprise is lost, there's really no point in trying to conduct that northeastern offensive anymore. So I would say that the chances of that are slim to none. But the chances of Israel invading southern Lebanon are actually fairly high given the current statements they made today. Excuse me.
Goodness.
I don't know what's going on with my esophagus tonight, but it's killing it. But anyways, beyond that, the Israelis want Hezbollah gone. They want them out of Lebanon, and they want them anywhere but there. And they're not going to leave because that's where Hezbollah has always been forever. And so this means that they will end up most likely invading southern Lebanon. They're going to create an occupational zone, and they're going to start trying to wipe out Hezbollah, even if they're not inside the occupation zone. So going off of that, I would have to say Israel will probably, at this point, knowing what we know right now, which is a very early picture, they probably will end up invading southern Lebanon and occupying it from what we know at the moment. And I hope that answers that question incredibly well. But still, thank you so much for the incredible support, Arthur, and also having incredibly kind things to say about the channel. We try our best to do everything that we can to make sure that this channel keeps running, to make sure it's as informational and as interesting as it can be. And folks like you who support this channel and help us to make this thing possible, make it a reality for us to be able to be here and keep doing this thing. And so thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you for asking some very good questions. But nevertheless, thank you for being a longtime member of the Lee Spring Army. Thank you for enjoying the Lee Spring Army, because not only do we try a lot to help out, the Lee Spring Army does a lot itself to help out as well, raising $13,000 for Save the Children, and the $1.3 million that we've raised in total over all of our fundraisers. It has been truly amazing, incredible even. And the Lee Spring Army continues to grow larger day by day. I mean, it's actually crazy. A lot of people have been congratulating us for reaching 210,000. We're already at 210,500. We're growing about 400, 500 subscribers per day still. And it's absolutely crazy to see that kind of growth and to think that it's not really slowing down these days anymore. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to BC Skyman, another channel legend who puts in that $20 donation. And BC did not leave a comment according to what I saw in the live chat, so huge shout out to BC once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out to BC Skyman. Didn't leave a comment, but the support is always greatly appreciated. And thank you so much once again for always helping to support this channel, BC Skyman. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep this thing rolling. And soon, we will hopefully be able to get our own medical bandages to you and be able to get those over to Yuri, so that way they can go over to Ukraine with the LSA flag and be given to the Ukrainian armed forces for them to fly on the battlefield. That will be incredibly cool. And I got to thank you so much once again for being a massive part of the Lee Spring Army, an old guard through and through, having been here since day 4 and been here onwards. A true legend by every single aspect. And I got to thank you greatly once again for being here and being a part of this channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tom Exman, who's also a longtime channel viewer. He puts in a $20 donation and says, here's for the YouTube's deductions of the cash donations from me the last few days.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, really quickly, let me make sure that I read that correctly. Sorry, everyone, my YouTube control room thing is lagging heavily. I think the chat went so fast, it kind of slowed down everything, so let me make sure to get to that one. And let's see here. One second.
I can reread it if you want.
Yeah, reread it.
Tom says, here's for the YouTube's deductions of the cash donations from me the last few days.
Oh, and thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. You do not have to worry about that at all. I thank you for caring though and sending that in and supporting the channel and helping us to make it possible. But you don't have to worry about that. That's okay. That's a-okay. But I'm more than happy to help out. I'm more than happy every once in a while to do something like that and take a loss. It's just that I always have to make sure that folks know that I can't do that as a norm. Like, everyone can't send in super chats in the tens of thousands every single week and go, I want you to send that over to a nonprofit. Because if it was in large, if it was in incredibly large numbers, like, say, like $1,000 of super chats that people sent in and said we want that sent to a nonprofit, I have to put $1,000 into that nonprofit. But in reality, we only made like $650, $700 out of those super chats. So I end up spending $350, $375 of my own money. And that wouldn't be a big problem, but if people did that a lot, endlessly, we would run out of money. We would go broke on our end trying to make sure that we keep up, how much is supposed to be going there, because YouTube takes 30%. So you don't have to worry about it. It's just that I always have to say that kind of stuff, though, just in case if people start thinking that that's a big trend thing. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Tom. You don't even have to worry about it at all, but thank you once again for caring and supporting this channel once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to, let's see here, it's going to go to Fred Matthewson, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, Fred. He says, as a former TOW 2 Bravo gunner in the U.S. Marine Corps, and also thank you for your service, he says, I've enjoyed your analysis on the future to tanks on the battlefield.
And thank you for the support, and thank you for finding the analysis pretty interesting. I feel like the analysis that I give on the future of the tank is pretty grounded, because the reality is, as everyone knows, the military never likes to get rid of a system. The British used the Vickers the Vickers medium machine gun all the way up until the late 60s, although it was very dated by that point. And the military always likes to know that they can keep something around until it's truly lived its entire life. And so I think that the tanks will certainly live on. It's just that they'll live on in a different way. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating that analysis. I try and make it as grounded in reality and realistic as possible, because tanks aren't going to become flying saucers anytime soon, that's for sure. But there are some things that just seem inevitable at this point, where you can say that's certainly the way tanks will be moving in the future everywhere around the world. And it looks like they really are, at least in Israel and some other countries for that matter. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for also being a TOW 2B gunner who is here in the channel. That is incredibly cool to hear, because the TOW 2B is really neat, because unlike all the other TOW 2Bs, well, not the TOW 2Bs, but all the other TOW variants, the TOW 1, the iTOW, the TOW 2, the TOW 2B is the only one, I believe, that explodes directly above its target instead of a direct impact. So that is a really, really cool thing that you were a gunner for that. But with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope I addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Nick LSA, who puts in a $10 donation. And it's good to see you once again, Nick, and also Carrie Ann, and thank you very much for that support. He said, hello, Andrew and Matt, and hello, Nick.
Hello.
He says, I'm having surgery on my right shoulder and bicep tomorrow. Goodness. He says, so I won't be as active for a few days, and wish Carrie Ann luck, LOL, and LLT LSA. And also, Nick, good luck with the surgery, by the way. Anytime you have to deal with doctors and surgery is not a good time, in my opinion. So good luck with it, and I hope it goes well. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I hope it goes well as well, Nick. That is surgery is something, I'll be honest, always gets me a little bit scared to think of surgery. But one thing I got to say is that, if you have to get a surgery, you have to get it. And I hope that it goes well. I hope that the surgeon's hand is really steady and everything else goes perfectly fine with it, because if I was in your shoes, I'd actually be pretty nervous about it. So I'm wishing you the best of luck. I would say don't be worried about it. Have faith in the surgeon, because the Elite Spring Army is behind the operation that you're going to be having, and hope that it will be good. Hopefully nothing will go wrong at all. Not even the smallest thing will go wrong. But I got to thank you so much, massively, once again, for always being here with us in the LSA. I thank you and Carrie Ann, the first LSA couple, for being here in the LSA with us all the time. And I will completely understand why you're not here for the next few days. We will be making sure to get updates from Carrie Ann the best we can. And we will be looking forward to you coming back to the Elite Spring Army. But thank you for letting us know in advance where you'll be, and I wish you the best of luck again. I hope everything goes well, and we will be cheering you when you come back. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Leadfoot, which I feel like I have that sometimes. But they put in a $10 donation and says, Enforcer, C-SPAN reported Lloyd Austin said on Ukraine targeting ATACMS in Russia, quote unquote, so it up to them on how and when to use it, and our hopes are that they'll create some pretty good effects.
Well, I think he's saying that in the scope of using them inside of occupied Ukraine. I don't think he's saying that about using them inside the Russian Federation, because the golden rule on U.S. weapons is that they can never be used inside of the Russian Federation, because it will largely be a pretty provocative act for us to provide weapons to Ukraine that end up being used on the Russians. So I believe he meant that within the scope of Ukraine. I don't think he meant that within the scope of them being used inside the Russian Federation, unless they're throwing the old precedent out of the window and it's just a bygone. That's what I would understand at the moment. But with that, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address it the best I can, at least off of my knowledge. And with that, we are on to the next one.
In our next one is going to go to another longtime channel legend who loves animal noises more than anything. It's
way.
Duncan VR.
No way.
Who puts in the $11 donation. 11 Australian, that is. 11A. But thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And here goes the animal noises. He says, Bamuba, sukabliat, baba, meow, woof. Geschlickverleichen. Here's my dinner money. What? He said, Baba, no food for me tonight. Meow, quack.
What?
My arm is hungry for the rock. My arm is hungry for rock. Baba, oink, sukabliat.
Oh,
that
why do you do that,
Pull them up.
Duncan? Oh, we got to pull up the marmot. Pull up the marmot.
Give me that marmot.
Pull up the marmot. We got to find the marmot. We got to go get the marmot. We got to go pull it up, man. We got to go find it. All right, pull it up. Go get it. Get it. Grab it.
Marmot.
Come on.
Give me
We
my
gotta load
marmot
it
right
up.
now.
We got to load it up. We sound like
Alan,
we're free.
Alan.
We sound stupid. But hey, it's the marmot!
Hello there.
Hey!
Just showing some rock or some plums or grapes, and none to the fly.
Aw, man. I'm trying to revitalize my dying channel by running daytime shows. Shut the prick! But beyond
I have a feeling that's gonna fail, Governor. Just a hunch. I'm no fortune teller, but I know a hot dog man.
Listen, Gob, I watched you go from 5 viewers to 3. Give it up, Governor. But anyways,
Oh man, don't talk about my 3 viewers. Oh man.
And then I tried to do a special show and it went down to 1 viewer. Oh man. Aw.
The marmot says, I have pity on your 3 viewers. The poor saps.
Did your mother buy those viewers? Did your mother want you to feel good for you? But anyways, beyond that, I hate to hear that the marmot's going to be going hungry. It doesn't have enough money to even buy its own rock or plum. And I hate to hear that. I really do, Duncan VR. And I hope that one day it'll eat again. I hope it will. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is great to know that you're always here and you're always throwing in the animal noises. Not only that, we get to have a little bit of fun with the marmot, because sometimes y'all give us something that we can kind of spurn off into something else completely. And this is like one of those things. Whenever y'all bring up the marmot, we just get to do whatever we want. And I love that. And thank you so much, Duncan VR, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And oh, hello, Governor. I would like to ask a question. Can you afford rent on your apartment? Why are you hitting so deep?
Oh man, don't make me show another hot dog live on the air. Oh man, it was unintentional while I stare at it for a solid 10 seconds.
Ew, yuck.
Yuck. Yuck.
Oh man, dude, oh my goodness. You remember that one time, Matthew, going down memory lane? I think it was a couple of months ago. You had said something like, well, actually it was both of us. I think we both ripped into that clown, way late in the stream. And so the next day, I think it was, he made his stream and the guy was so angry, he was actually gritting his teeth and like visibly shaking, almost crying even. I mean, that was hilarious. Man. That was hilarious.
It was hilarious. We have so much fun with this. It's insane. We turned that negative into a positive. And the marmot has made it all possible. If it wasn't for this good fella right here on the screen, it wouldn't be possible. It's all thanks to him.
We have to thank Alan the Marmot for being a legend. I hate to hear that.
Come on, Alan!
Alan! But still, I got to thank Alan the Marmot for being a legend, because it is crazy to know that it's been around like that, and it's become our way to vent. But still, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support in helping this channel to keep on running, Duncan VR, and thank you for throwing in the traditional animal noises, being a true legend of the channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to another channel legend. It is Wubba, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wubba, for that support once more. He says, Matt, thanks for replacing the flag that the post office lost, and I wish you could replace the other stuff that they've lost. And I'll tell you what, Wubba, that post office has lost a pretty decent amount of stuff that we sent out. They have lost at least, I think it was like 6 or 7 flags at this point. We've had to ship out replacements for. And I think we have a lost mug now too, thanks to the USPS. So I must be honest with you, the post office is not the best. They're not running that very well, and it's really irritating me at this point that we're having to make y'all wait for so long to get it in anticipation, and then all of a sudden it doesn't get delivered, and then you'll have to wait for a replacement to arrive, and then we're also out the replacement, and it's all thanks to the beautiful USPS. But seriously though, sorry about that inconvenience. I told you in the email earlier today as well. Sorry about that, because apparently they stuck it in someone else's mailbox, and someone got a LSA flag, and they have no clue probably what that's about. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Before I even address that super chat, Wubba, I want y'all to see one of the most quintessential scams I've ever seen in a live chat. I am Ukraine soldier here in Finland and need money. Ticket for aeroplane. I have back Ukraine. Someone send money.
Who said that?
I'm gonna ban him because that is a scam. 100%. No one give that guy money. That is like, let me explain something really quickly. If you soldier Ukraine army, leave country. You stay country. You stay Ukraine. You leave country, desertion, prison time, bad time, no good, no money, no aeroplane, no plane ticket. I saw that, Matthew, and now you'll see who I banned. That's who it was. I saw that, and I was like, no freaking way. I was like, that's the thing I try and insulate y'all from by running YouTube Give fundraisers is, hello, I'm Nigerian Prince. I have $800 million. You're heir. Come take money. Give me gift card. I'm like, no, we aren't doing that. It will be none of that. I have never seen anything like. I cannot believe that. That was such a open and front scam. I've never seen that in the chat before. Just that upfront about it. Usually it's like some kind of an elaborate scheme, and then we end up getting them before they can get to like the even mid part of the scheme. But that was crazy. That was just the most upfront thing I've ever seen. But beyond that, unlike that scammer, I will say this. I thank you so much for really appreciating how much dedication we have to making sure that y'all get what y'all are supposed to get, because the LSA flags aren't just a thing. It's the symbol of the Lee Spring Army. Y'all didn't just buy a flag, any flag. Y'all bought the first LSA flags out there. And when I heard that you lost it, I immediately told Matthew that we had to make sure to get a replacement. He agreed completely. We want to make sure that when y'all deal with our merch store, that y'all have the best experience y'all can ever have. The packing has to be good. The quality of the products has to be good. Everything in between has to be the best. That's why we started running the merch store ourselves. And I'm so happy to know that you're really appreciative that we did replace the flag, because so far we've had to replace several because they've just been lost in the mail. I'm going to go wring out Newman's neck soon. He's going to go, well, Jerry, I guess it was lost in the mail. He's gonna be like chugging it. It's gonna be like, get him the damn flags and the mugs, because they have actually lost a lot. I mean, it's crazy how much they've lost. But still, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and really appreciating how much we want to make sure that things go well for all y'all, especially you, Wubba, because when I heard it was you, because Matthew was already giving you the green light, and then I was just kind of giving you the green light as a double green light, but. When I heard it was you, I was like, there's no way we can't get you a replacement flag because you've been here forever. I mean, you've been here for 2 years now. And if anyone deserves to get a backup flag, even if the other one is lost in the mail right now and then it shows up later because this actually happened for someone else, it's totally fine. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for your support as well. Jenna said, I have a suspicion that Nightbot is a bot. That's a very astute observation there, Jenna. They said, I could be wrong, and I'm sorry to call her out like this. It had to be done.
The Nightbot is a bot. It is an automated machine that we've made to make our jobs a little bit easier running the live chat. So yes, it is a bot. Jenna, you are absolutely correct. And also, no problem in calling the Nightbot out. I don't even think it cares. It can't even understand this being called out. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. And Matthew, when the AI uprising happens, Nightbot's personally going to execute me because I said it can't even understand what's going on, and I insulted its intelligence. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, channel Last Name Tolls, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in another 10 and says the enforcer would never do war crimes. Or you could interpret it as the enforcer would never do war crimes.
Or you could interpret it sarcastically and go, the enforcer would never, conduct a war crime. You could interpret it many different ways. You could actually put emphasis on each word in that sentence and get a completely different meaning out of it. The enforcer will never commit a war crime. The enforcer will never commit a war crime. The enforcer will never commit a war crime. That's you could do that. It's like a different meaning for each sentence. But beyond that,
the enforcer will never commit any more war crimes.
Oh, no, that's deep. What if I
added words to it?
Don't ask what I did in the Balkans. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, by the way. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my god, no, I didn't do nothing. I wasn't even alive then." But beyond that, I will say, I would never commit a war crime because a lot of people out there, like, I'll tell you something. You hear people raw, unfiltered out there in the world, and when you really think about after actually having watched a war for 2 years and really thinking about what people say, some stuff is just heinous. Like, you'll just hear out there in the world normally, man, when someone robs the store, they ought to be dragged out in the street, have forks stuck through their eyes, and then shot through the mouth. And you're like, do you understand how sick that sounds? Like, like actually having seen stuff like that, it's like, do you know how messed up that is? And also how out of proportion that is for the crime? I mean, like, I get punishment, sure. I'm not for letting someone who robs someone, go free. But it's like, there's got to be, like, it's got to be kind of like a fair punishment for that, not just the most severe thing. And that's when, that's the thing where I'm like, nah, I'm not going to be inhumane, because a lot of people out there are, like, I truly think either they don't realize the scope of what they're saying, or they're actually sadistic. I don't know which it is. But I mean, like, goodness, like, it actually drives me crazy, especially when people, like, and this is one thing that also, by the way, not touching on politics, but this is one thing that keeps me out of politics, is whenever someone says so-and-so politician should be hanged. And I've heard it for everyone. And I'm always like, do you understand you can just vote them out, right? Like, if you don't like them, or if they're not in your district, it's not even your problem. It's the other people's problems that voted for them if they don't like them. It's like, don't have to execute them, because that's kind of the whole point. We vote them in and out, is so that way if you don't like them, you just vote them out. It's like, I don't get people in the modern day, and I especially don't get people when it comes to war, because a lot of people really are kind of like bloodthirsty when it comes to war, and they want heinous things to happen. They're like, man, glass the Middle East. And you're like, well, what about everyone that's just living there that's doing nothing? Glass them too. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, well, that's crazy right there. You can't just do that kind of stuff. But with that, I hope that does address that well, because while that may be, I don't know, sarcastic or serious, I would never actually want to condone or have the United States committing war crimes while I'm in charge. Because I don't think anyone does, honestly, but it's sick to even think of stuff like that, or to think that you support something like that, on a moralistic or a philosophical level, But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here, while the spreadsheet loads back in, this one's going to go to Tezlands, who puts in a 10. He says, Enforcer, how about you send young Matt to Ukraine on an LSA mission to have a meeting with officials of the Ukrainian government to broker a way to support United 24 through YouTube Give. Tezlands, I have a better idea. How about we send young Tezlands to Ukraine on an LSA mission to meet with the officials? We can both go Tezlands. We can both go to Ukraine. I don't know how we're going to get there, but we can both try to go and try to cross the border. I don't even know if they let people in anymore, do they?
Let's see. I would say they do let people in. Ukraine does let people in all the time.
Oh, well, then me and Tezlands might be going then.
Let me go pull this up, though. Plane ticket from Atlanta to Warsaw, because you can't fly directly into Ukraine. So, my God, $2,300 per person in
To do what?
in economy class to fly from Atlanta to Warsaw.
Oh, damn.
That is so freaking expensive. That really puts it into perspective. And from what I could tell, That was just a one-way ticket. Let me make sure I was reading that right. Let me go type that in again. Atlanta to Warsaw. Enter. Okay, so, and these are connecting flights, by the way. So this is like the cheapest you can get them. So let me see here. Let's see. Oh, they tell you the CO2 emissions. I feel like if you were CO2 conscious, you wouldn't be flying like all the way around the world in the first place. But you know, anyways, let's see here. So you can get on JetBlue and die for $1,300. Or you can get on, or you can get on a Delta flight, or Air France. Well, actually, it's Delta and then Air France once you get into Europe, because there's a hop in Paris apparently. But it's $2,200 for that flight. It's a lot of money for really any of them. And if you want to go British Airways, straight from Atlanta to Warsaw with no stops in between, that's $2,710 for economy class. You know, it's round trip actually, so it's a round trip. But okay, so I want to put that into perspective, okay? So any American YouTuber that you've seen that flies to Ukraine has already, at a bare minimum most likely, spent about $2,300 just to get there. $2,300 just to get there. I want y'all to think about that, because for us to occasionally get heat because we run our fundraisers through YouTube Give and you can't skim money out of it even if you wanted to. Other people are taking money that has been fundraised to help out Ukraine and they're spending $2,300 of it just so that way they can take a nice photo op and a paid vacation for a week in a war-torn country. That is actually really shocking because I've never actually looked into the price of an airline ticket over there until now. That is insane. I mean, that price, I can't even comprehend how much that is. That is, let me think, how much would that be in comparison? Let's see, that's about half of a truck that is provided to the Ukrainian Armed Forces just for one person to fly over there. And then who knows how much the hotels and stuff cost after that. And then transportation out of the plane, like by train through Poland and then into Ukraine. Who knows how much that adds on. That's a lot of money. I mean, that is a lot of money. To be honest, if we did anything with Ukraine, I don't really know how we would do it, like getting over to Ukraine, like with the cost side of things, because like, I feel like, here's one thing, like, if we were to go over to the Ukrainian government, I feel like it'd be better for us to pick a representative in Europe that could travel there a lot cheaper, so that we were not just, you know, blowing money for, like, a free vacation into a war-torn country. Or, if we were to ever do our nonprofit idea and start to raise direct support, we pick LSA members, we pretty much turn them into officers, and then y'all move the stuff into Ukraine that we send over there, so that way we're not wasting thousands of dollars on each trip, and those thousands of dollars, instead of just going into us getting a free vacation and a photo op, we can actually throw that into more support and also more shipping costs, so that way we can get it on over there. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I can see. But that is a little crazy. I mean, I gotta say, Matthew, $2,300 for a round trip is insane. Like I don't know, man.
That's just nuts, man. That's like a whole vacation, like just in the flight, like in the tickets.
I know. Like let me think. Like, I think an average hotel here in America costs about $170 a night. Yeah, I'm talking about like a Holiday Inn or something like that. And so at $2,200, which is just to get over there without getting hotels and anything, $2,200 divided by 170. Oh, sorry, wrong math. Divided by 170. You could stay anywhere in America for 10 nights for the same cost it is just to fly to Ukraine. You know, if you really wanted a vacation.
That is nuts, man. That's way too much.
I mean, that's a lot of hot dogs, man. That's a lot of grease trap water right there in like just an airplane ticket. But anyways, with that,
but yet we're the grifters.
Oh yeah, we're the Tokyo grifters, man. Like we say, all of it goes to the channel. Hey, help me fundraise for a truck, and then at least $2,300 goes into an airplane ticket, like a normal one. Turkish Airlines apparently flies you over there for like $890, but I'm doubting it was Turkish Airlines. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. But anyways, getting back to what we were talking about, I had to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I would say that would be a cool idea, but one, I don't know if the Ukrainian government will want to talk to us because you have to kind of be up on the A list, which we aren't. So you have to be someone like Mark Hamill or someone like that to be able to talk to the Ukrainian government. We could probably do whatever we wanted to over a call, which would probably be a lot more economical. But I would love to see if we could do something like that, but I feel like that's kind of out of our reach to be able to talk to the Ukrainian government. You know, like, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, but General Petraeus watches the show, and foreign ministers watch the show. And yeah, they do, but I don't know if anyone in the Ukrainian government legitimately watches the show or would legitimately care about us, because so far from what we've seen, sometimes the people that you just would not expect to watch this show, and the people that you would expect would care about the show just don't give a damn. And so, you know, that's something that we've run into lately, where we're like, wow, that's very interesting. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Tesla, and helping this channel. It was Teslans, right?
It was Teslans.
Okay, I don't know why I
Young
said
Teslans.
Young Teslans. Thank you so much for the support, Young Teslans, Young Blood, for supporting this channel and helping us keep this thing running, because you help it to be possible. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
He said,
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't know this.
I did. Well, we're moving on to our next one here, which goes to Paramecium 13, who puts in a 10 as well and says, this came up in a game of trivia at work. When exactly would you say that the Cold War ended, and wasn't it already over by the time the USSR was dissolved on 12/26/1991?
Yes, I'd actually say, and isn't that crazy that it was the day after Christmas that the Soviet Union collapsed? It's like the best late Christmas present ever in America. You know, the Soviet Union just dissolving one day after Christmas. But beyond that, to answer your question, I would say that the Cold War ended in 1989. The reason why I say that is because when the Berlin Wall fell, we saw that at the exact same time that was happening, a lot of European countries, well, Eastern European countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, which, Romania, but it isn't really part, per se, of...
What?
Well, it isn't really part of the Warsaw Pact. That's kind of the weird thing about Romania, is that they kind of were, but they kind of weren't. They were kind of like the unwanted stepchild of the whole Warsaw Pact. And then Yugoslavia, of course, was dissolving already by that point. But I would say that 1989 was that time, because by then the writing was already on the wall for everyone around the world. The Warsaw Pact was coming down, and that means that Soviet influence is non-existent, and they will also be collapsing here soon, too. So I would have to say the end of the Cold War, to me, was 1989. The Soviet Union would collapse in 1991. And you know what was crazy? Is that, you know, Matthew, what was the last country left in the Soviet Union?
Was it Belarus or Kazakhstan?
Oh, dude, you got it on the second try. It was Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was the last country left in the Soviet Union for I think 15 days or something like that. And then they jumped ship and then said, okay, we're not the Soviet Union anymore, we're Kazakhstan. But that was kind of stupid, because the Soviet Union had already ceased to exist. The Soviet Union was literally just Kazakhstan at that point, and that was it. But still, kind of cool fact that Kazakhstan was actually the last country to leave the Soviet Union.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is very interesting. Kazakhstan, the place of Borat.
But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for making it possible. That would be my answer to when the Cold War ended, around 1989. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to none other than Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a $100 donation.
Dang.
100 smackaroos, and thank you very much, Blue Flam, for that very generous support.
No,
and
don't
we'll
read
see
it,
here.
Don't read it. Censor it. No, I just read it.
Oh,
don't do it.
Let's see here.
No.
I actually don't understand it, but it sounds sketchy. I don't know. It's long Ukraine. Take one from the chat.
We will take one from the chat. I can't read that, Blue Flame. I'm so misfortunate to know.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yes, I'm so misfortunate to know what that is. What? How did you just Google that or something, Matthew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so misfortunate to have known what that was. I wish I had gone to a different high school. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that is a pretty good joke. If it was not on this channel, it's a pretty interesting one. But sadly, we just cannot read that joke. But still, long live the Lee Spring Army. Oh my. But long live the Leaf Spring Army. Thank you so much once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a question from the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
I literally did. I came in, somebody said, "Oh dear Lord!" I came in with the "Oh great heavens!"
Oh, great heaven, dude! Wait, hang on. I gotta go. Wait, we gotta go pull up that soundbite. Wait, hang on. Oh, great heavens! I wish I could do it better, but let me go get it. Let's see. Oh, great heavens! Here we go. Yeah, here we go. I found it.
Oh great heavens! Oh yeah, that super baked audio.
Yeah. Oh, great heavens! But let's go get the live chat in honor of Blue Flame Super Chat.
So the one in honor of the super chat goes to DVN, who says, "Why doesn't the U.S. send A-10 to Ukraine? It's better for ground support."
Well, the A-10, well, this is actually something that I've said that's been controversial in the past. I think I'm going to have to stick with it because it appears that the Department of Defense here in America and Ukraine are also on the same page. The A-10 is fairly dated as a platform. It does well, but it does well when there's no enemy air presence or enemy ground air defense presence. So it really requires air superiority to be able to operate, a lot like an AC-130 gunship would. So for that reason, and considering that the Russians have incompetent air defense, but they still have air defense, they probably do not want the A-10 because it's slow. It would be fairly easy to shoot down for that reason. And not only that, it just can't really do the kind of missions that it needs to do. The A-10 has been in service for a while, generally because of military politics. It's not like domestic politics. It's a completely different world. So we can kind of talk about it a little bit, and I'll try and explain it the best I can. So way back in the day, there were these people called the Reformists, I believe, and they're still around kind of today. But back in the day, they looked at things like the F-16, which does everything that the A-10 can do, and they said, that's just so stupid. These advanced modern aircraft that are trying to improve on technology and become better dogfight, really better all-around aircraft. We need something like that would have existed in World War II that's rugged, reliable. It doesn't go fast. Who needs all that fancy schmancy speed? And just give it a big-ass gun, like in World War II. For some reason, in World War II, they had massive guns. So give it a big gun, and it can do everything. It can dogfight. It can do ground support. And, of course, it can't dogfight. That was just... Well, it can, but that's a whole other point. But they came up with the A-10 for that reason. And the A-10 immediately in the military was considered not that great. A lot of people love it because it's a huge morale booster. Now, that you can't get wrong, because that 30mm Gal gun makes such a noise that it just lifts everyone's spirits in the U.S. forces, because when you hear it, you know things are great. Air support's there. But the thing is that it is a slow plane. It has a decent amount of flaws, mostly due to its speed, and also the way that it operates. And the problem is that the only reason it's been kept in service, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain the problem, is that the reformist folks in the military, who are just backwards ass in their beliefs, say that this airplane still has a role in the battlefield, and it just really doesn't. I mean, there's no real good way to explain it. I'll try and explain it the best I can. In the Gulf War, the highest amount of friendly fire incidents that occurred were from the A-10 Warthog. The gun spread is not that great. It's like a shotgun nearly at some distances. So if the enemy is close in and you're trying to actually provide almost precision air support with just the gun alone, you're probably going to end up getting friendly fire casualties just because of the spread of the gun. Not only that, the A-10 Warthog, it does not have a lot of vision, well, I guess you could say optic systems inside of it. During the Gulf War in particular, it was actually noted that a huge complaint of A-10 pilots was that they actually had to carry a pair of field binoculars with them to be able to put them up to their visor while flying the A-10 and look around trying to look for ground targets in the distance, because there was no real interlink with the ground or any good way to see enemy targets. And that also led to an increase of friendly fire rates, because they would look at an enemy column, they would believe it was an enemy, they would fire on it, and lo and behold, it was a coalition column, which was a bit of an issue. So the thing, like, the A-10 just isn't good. That's the best way I can explain it. It's a wonderful looking plane, really cool looking, has a really cool sounding gun, But especially in the modern world of air war, it is a completely useless plane. It's as useless as the AC-130 gunship is at this point, because both of them require complete air superiority to be able to be used at all, and that is something that in the modern world, in a modern conventional war, like with a large power like China or Russia, it simply would never exist. So the aircraft is completely useless for an actual conventional war. That's probably why the Ukrainians have never really asked for them, and the United States has never really gave them or even looked at all at giving them, because even we're retiring them. The honest answer about this aircraft is that the F-16 does everything that the A-10 does. The only thing that the F-16 is missing, armament-wise on this plane, is that 30mm gun. And then the shocking thing about the gun is that it can't really pierce armor. And that's one thing that's kind of really shocking, because that's kind of the whole selling point, is that the plane's gun is a tank buster. But the reality is that it was a tank buster when it was introduced in the service. In the modern day, it's not a tank buster anymore. The armor's been upgraded a lot on most main battle tanks around the world, the Chinese and Russian main battle tanks. And for that reason, I believe the shells, the depleted uranium shells that this thing fires, can pierce through 90mm of armor. It would even be hard-pressed to pierce the side armor of a main battle tank, much less the front armor. This thing would actually have to come in behind a tank, firing onto the engine bay or the direct rear of the turret to actually cause any real damage, which is a bit of an issue, because you could fire a AGM-65 Maverick, I believe it's called, at a tank. It will end up hitting it and destroying it no matter what. You can fire a Hellfire at it. It would end up hitting and destroying it no matter what angle it hits at or what distance. You can fire any kind of an ordnance at a tank and end up destroying it, but the gun would not. So the gun then becomes useless unless if it's a soft target, like an armored personnel carrier or an infantry column or some kind of a truck. So to sum this all up, the reason why I don't think that the Ukrainians are getting any of these A-10s is just simply because they don't want them, and they don't really fit into a modern battlefield the way an F-16 would, because the F-16 fits in like a glove. The Gripen does.
Also, Paramecium said, what about the top? He said if it was firing straight down.
Oh, they're firing from the top, you would be able to take out anything. You could take out an Abrams firing a A-10 straight down at a 90-degree angle right into the top of an Abrams. But the reality is you'll never be able to do that, because if an A-10 was able to actually get a dive that was that steep, it would have to be at such a high altitude to be able to pull out of that dive. It would be visible to air defense pretty much for dozens of miles the entire time, and probably would have multiple surface-to-air missiles launched at it at that point. So while it may be able to kill that one Abrams, or well, not Abrams, that one T-90 in that one particular instance, it will most likely not survive that engagement due to the altitude it had to be at to even begin that dive on that tank. So it could do it, but it wouldn't survive in a modern air war in that sense. Like, I hate to say it, things going out. They plan on retiring this thing, I believe, by 2030, in the next 6 years. It was actually planned on being retired in the Gulf War, but then it ended up being such a big morale booster, and it ended up catching a lot of popularity with the news outlets that the public loved it so much that they decided to extend its service. So it's really well beyond retirement at this point by about 30 years even, but we've kept it around. This is a big morale thing, and it's also a great recruiting tool, because so many people love the A-10s. You know, the Air Force is like, hey, you want to be near A-10s? Come join the Air Force, and that's what gets people to sign up. And then they don't even end up near an A-10 because the Air Force doesn't allow you to pick your job; they pick it for you. It's in there, like, you know, go to wherever you want to go. Well, go wherever we tell you to go, really. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And Blue Flame 777 says it's used for ground support, not air superiority. And that's true too. And that's another drawback of the A-10, is that it's not a multi-role aircraft. It is a singular role aircraft. It is a ground support aircraft. The F-16 can do both. It is a multi-role fighter. So that means it can do air to ground better than an A-10, and it can do air to air way better than an A-10 ever could. And that's a huge selling point of getting them F-16s instead of A-10s as well, is that the F-16 can fill multiple different roles. The A-10 can only do one, which is ground support. And so with that, I hope that does go through everything I can, as best I can. And the A-10, I want to say this, A-10 is cool. The E-10 is neat. It will always have a place in everyone's heart, but the honest truth is that the thing is getting fairly outdated for the role it's in. But I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the notorious GRG, who puts in a 10. It says, I finally got paid, so yippee-yee-yo-kaya LSA, and Slav Ukraine.
And hey, thank you for the support and yippee-ki-yay, baby. And nice to hear that you are supporting the channel. Help us keep it running. But hey, I wanted to remind you once again, if anyone is ever in a bit of a pinch, you don't worry about supporting this channel. This channel runs completely free, ad-free, sponsor-free on the live streams. We do have sponsors though on the videos, and we do have ads. So that's like a whole other ballpark. And also, the sponsors are hopefully going to help us be able to get a budget to be able to pump out nice videos for once. But beyond that, I gotta say thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You're helping it to be possible, and I can't thank you enough again for making this thing a reality. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in an $8 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for your support as well. She said, did you know that the first drone was used in World War II? It is one of those models, the DH. The 82B Queen Bee gave the name drone to these aircraft.
Let's see. DH-82B. Oh, can you give that to me again?
It's the DH 82B Queen Bee.
82B Queen Bee. Let's go check this thing out. What do we got? So let's see here. Trying to look. What I'm finding is the Tiger Moth. Hopefully that's correct. Let's see here. I'm not seeing anything about it being a drone. But let me see if I can look around a little bit more. And let's see. Let's look through all the. Oh, here we go. So, a target drone for anti-aircraft gunnery training. It could be flown unmanned under radio control, but was also fitted with a cockpit so it could be flown by a pilot. Tiger Moth wings were used, and to reduce cost, a wooden fuselage based on that of the DH-60 Moth, but with the structural changes associated with the cabane struts having been relocated as per the standard Tiger Moth, was used. Between 1935 and 1943, 412 were built and floated, and wheeled versions as of 2008. The sole remaining airworthy Queen Bee resides at RAF Henlow in England. So that is actually really cool. I actually did not know that they had drones, target drones in World War II. That's actually really neat to think about. Like, they actually had the technology to have a target drone back then. I thought that was something that existed more so around the times of Vietnam than World War II. I didn't even know about this. And I got to thank you for sharing that little fact with us. That is incredibly cool. Also, the Tiger Moth is really cool, too. It was like a little trainer biplane that the British had. I think it looks cute. I think it looks pretty neat.
I think it looks all right. It looks like what Ukraine might have used to take down some of those little things yesterday. You know, those drones.
Man, that yak.
Yak, 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 yak.
But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to CK Bold, who orders the regular, the number 5. And says, take a live chat question. And we shall. We shall. Thank you very much, CK Bold, for that. And also, by the way, I see Duncan VR. He said, I'm joking, bro. I run an online store, and I had KFC. I'm glad to hear you got KFC, because I was like, wait a minute. Like, he's got to be joking. He did not just give us his dinner money, like, for real, because you were saying that again. I was like, no way. I'm like, that can't be. But I'm glad to hear you had KFC. Hopefully you had the bucket, because it's good. But you got to drink a ton of water with it, though, or otherwise it literally chokes you to death. But anyways, the live chat question goes to Eric Andreas, who says, wouldn't the Iranians bail out Russia in an oil crisis?
Well, they might. I don't really know, though, for sure. But it's a possibility. I will say that. It's a possibility. I wouldn't know about that one for sure. I think I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more and see if they would want to do that and how much oil the Iranians produce to even ship to the Russians if they want to. But then again, it's not about oil. It's about the refined oil products that come out of the oil, like gas, diesel, and all that kind of stuff. So I would have to say I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more and see if something like that could happen, because that's something we may not factored in yet. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we got a quick little poll right here. It says, should they get rid of the A-10 Warthog? 74% said no, keep them for their strengths, and 27% said it's time to put them down. And to me, I would say honestly, keep them around, because there's a reason why we've left them in service for this long, and I think it goes a little bit beyond simply using them as recruiting tools. They are favorites of the ground forces because they are excellent tools for airstrikes, and that gun is basically the sound of a savior for the ground forces on the ground whenever they call it in, and it saved a lot of lives. and it may be getting a little bit old, but kind of like the Humvee, that doesn't mean it's down and out for the count. That simply means it needs to be basically repurposed or readapted for different circumstances. But I think Ukraine should get a couple of them. Ukraine has asked for it, and the West has considered it in the past, but I think they ultimately sort of let it go. But I'm with the 73%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the A-10 needs to be put down. The Air Force is of that consensus. They're already planning on retiring most, if not all of them, by next year because they're just old. They're dated. And Matthew's making a point of saying, well, they're favorites, so why not keep them around? But if we go off of that kind of a logic to fight a war, we should have the P-47 Thunderbolt, which is what the A-10... Well, really quickly, the A-10 is called the A-10 Thunderbolt II. There was an original Thunderbolt. The reason why the A-10 is called the Thunderbolt is because this was the fan favorite before the A-10 Thunderbolt II, or as we call it, the Warthog. This was the P-47 Thunderbolt, which was our version of the A-10 Warthog in World War II. And this thing did work back in World War II. This was actually the most successful aircraft we made as far as its kills to losses, all that kind of stuff per sortie. This was a great plane. But the reality is that war changes, and with war, you have to get rid of old stuff that just will end up being useless. Like, imagine this thing being used in Vietnam. That would be unbelievable. I mean, it would have been completely dated by that point. That's what we're talking about with the A-10 Warthog. And what's even crazier is that from World War II to Vietnam, that's only 20-something years away. The A-10 is 50 years old now. 50 years old, and we still have it in service. That is really crazy when you think about something like that. And I think it needs to go. It's old. I mean, that the Air Force is even in consensus with that. And while it may be a fan favorite and the ground troops may love it, the ground troops aren't going to be able to love it anymore in the future if we go into a conventional war with, say, Russia or China. This is going to get shot down before it even makes it anywhere for anyone to have their spirits lifted by the sound of the gun. So, you know, I would have to say...
I want my spirits lifted by the sound of the gun. You know, there's been a lot of enemies who've had their spirits lifted by the sound of the gun, too.
To hell, or to hell, I don't know which one.
Down, it could be lowered, a little lowered by the sound of the gun.
Shoigu! That's another A-10 Warthog, I believe. But still, with that, I hope that addresses that in my opinion. People are violent about this, though. You know, they're like, man, I want my A-10. I just I think it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I think the P-47 Thunderbolt is cool. It's a cool looking plane, but when talking about people's lives being on the line, like the pilots of the A-10 and their lives being on the line, I think it's time for us to give them something new. The F-35 does everything that an A-10 does. This plane right here, a stealth aircraft, does everything that the A-10 does. It can travel faster, it can maneuver better, it can carry as many weapons, if not more than the A-10 with external pylons. It is better all around. That's what they're replacing the A-10 Warthogs with, is with F-35s. I would rather have my ground support pilots flying the most advanced aircraft that will make it to the battlefield in the first place than an A-10 Warthog. That would be my opinion. And also, a lot of people in the chat who were saying they had an A-10 support them. I'm betting, and I'm betting pretty heavily here, that you were most likely in Iraq or Afghanistan. And remember, by that point, when the A-10s were being used there, the Iraqis had no air support because we were occupying the country and the Iraqi armed forces had ceased to exist. And if anyone had any kind of anti-air weapons, they were incredibly minimal. And in Afghanistan, there was practically no anti-air defenses by the Mujahideen or the Taliban at all. So in those instances, the A-10 was amazing. I mean, you couldn't get better than that in those kinds of environments. But I'm talking about the wars we think we're going to be fighting in the future, which aren't going to be these small little asymmetrical wars. They're going to be these massive conventional wars like we're seeing in Ukraine, with endless amounts of air defense being on both sides. And when we're talking about that, we want something as advanced and cutting edge as the F-35. And this is what I think this is certainly the best move in the right direction of the future, is to replace the A-10s with the F-35s. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and this is just my opinion. Everyone can disagree at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter because it's just a whole bunch of opinions by all of us, and it's not going to change anything. But I hope I addressed that well, at least in my opinion. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Panama Floyd, another channel legend. And thank you very much, Panama, for that $20 support. He says, Enforcer, in reference to your previous comment about tanks, I'd always thought that tanks were meant to be put big guns mobile on the battlefield and to try to end trench combat in World War I. And what say you?
Yes, that's true. Tanks were made to end trench warfare and make the battlefield more mobile. The thing is, though, the thing is with tanks, it's really hard to explain because when I'm trying to think about how to explain that, like Ukraine is going to a trench war, but there's a lot of tanks on all sides. I think nowadays what's really stagnated the trenches is that the trenches now are more powerful than the tank because of anti-tank weapons and drone support and artillery support and all that. The tank isn't really that strong, so you have to end up making the tank stronger so that way you can actually go up against the firepower of a trench to be able to break through again. And I think they're going to be doing that through active protection systems like the Trophy, because you have to be able to have the tank exist to be able to get to the enemy line to then punch through. And that's kind of the problem right now is that they get destroyed before they even get close to a trench line. And so with that,
and also, by the way, I see Walter Lakota saying in the live chat, he said, don't forget to mention the A1 Sky Raider as well.
Oh, yeah, Walter, good point. My God, Walter, you're a genius. I have to mention that. Now, the P-47 Thunderbolt, by the way, was not the aircraft that was in service that the A-10 replaced. The A-10, well, actually, the P-47 was replaced by something called the A-1 Sky Raider, and then the A-1 Sky Raider was replaced by the A-10. This is the A-1 Sky Raider. And this is what the A-10 ended up replacing. It got old. Like with every weapon system, it got old too. Like, there's just a time and a point on a battlefield where you have to go, these things are getting old, we got to get rid of them. And this was the one. This thing served all the way up until Vietnam, though. So it went from Korea to Vietnam, but that was only a short span of like 20 years. And then it was replaced by the A-10. But, you know, by that point in Vietnam, they were starting to realize this thing isn't the greatest. It's got a bunch of flaws. It's not really holding up well in the modern world. So we started giving them to South Vietnam, but even they didn't really like them. So with that, I hope that does address it well. But Walter Lakota, you had a good point there, because you know it went the way of the Dodo as well, just like the P-47 Thunderbolt, and the way the A-10 will too. The A-10 will end up being a museum piece and an air show piece here in about 10 years. And I'm not complaining. I think it's fine. I think it's great to keep the A-10 around. I don't have a hatred for it. It's just that I don't think it's good for the modern world for fighting an actual war. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Surprise It's Us. And they put in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Surprise It's Us, for that support. And they said, take a question from Jorn, please. And let's see here. Surprise It's Us. Let's see if I have a question from Jorn in the spreadsheet up here. And let's see, yeah, I'm not seeing a question from Jorn up here in the spreadsheet. So I'm looking through the live chat real quick, see if I can spot it. See if I can come across it real quick. So let's see here. It'd be great if they had like a search feature in this, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm not seeing Jorn. I'm not seeing a question from him. So if there is a question, he can put it in the live chat, and we will read it off. Because I'm not seeing it at the moment. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say thank you for the support and wanting us to get a live chat. But sadly, we wouldn't be able to because we don't have one from Jorn at the moment. But if Jorn does throw one in, we will make sure to circle back around and get it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Larry Murill, who puts in a 5 and says, look back video with your backstory, channel backstory.
Ah, yes. I see you know my channel well. Good one. I'll answer. So to give it the quick backstory, the channel started off back on, let's see, it was like September 7th.
I think he's saying he wants a look back video with the backstory.
Oh, you know, I could do that one day. I feel like, you know, I keep saying this. I feel like the channel has to get bigger for us to do something like that. Like, I would love to get up to like 500,000 subscribers and then finally explain the story of the channel. But maybe we'll do that at some point in the future, really explain where the channel came from and how it got to here. Because it was actually a really cool story because we ended up, it was actually me at the time. Matthew wasn't here. No one else was here. I ended up starting the channel way back in 2021, actually, in the later part of that year, to try and cover the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I created a 40-minute y'all have never even heard of a video that length, have y'all? A 40-minute long documentary about the entire history of Afghanistan, from the very first times that history was recorded in Afghanistan all the way up until the present day, to explain the withdrawal. It was a true rabbit hole of rabbit holes. It took like 6 days to edit the whole thing together, and it got a whopping 112 views. And I was like, man, that was a lot of work to get like no views, and no traction at all. I think I got like 1 subscriber off of it, and I was like, all right. Okay. That's just, so I kind of cried a little. And then I made another video the next week on the riots in Hong Kong, and started covering the history of Hong Kong and why in the world the riots existed in the first place and all that. And then that got 102 views, and I went, dang. I was like, this is tough. And so then I took a break from YouTube for about a month, and then I came back and I was like, you know what, maybe I could do a gaming channel instead. Maybe people would like that better, because it looks like people don't want to hear my take or my story on the world. So then I went and played games, and then games actually did better, believe it or not. Games did better than my first like attempts at getting into current events and stuff. But then when the Ukraine war kicked off, I switched back to doing news reporting, because I didn't really like gaming, to be quite honest. It was kind of lame. I would rather do this instead. And so as soon as the opportunity arose for me to start trying to cover current events again, I jumped on it immediately. Was here covering the war in Ukraine within the first hour of it happening. And now, well, actually not 200. I don't even know what time zone I'm living in right now. But 797 days later, I'm still doing this. And I'm still here. And then Matthew joined me, I think about a month in. Well, a month into the Ukraine war. Oh, hello there.
I replaced that awful fellow that was here before me. That turned on us like a wild dog.
Yeah, that awful guy who was kind of leading the group that was trying to extort me and also try and tell me how to run the show. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much for your support. Maybe I'll be able to make a video about that one day. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go back to Surprise It's Us, who sponsored that question from Yorn, who showed up in the live chat. Yorn has spoken. He said, what about the British laser anti-air guns?
The British laser anti-air guns. I know what you're talking about, and those are actually really neat. They're going to be mounted onto British warships in general, and I think it's a great replacement for the CIWS and CRAM systems. They're certainly going to be a lot more cost efficient, and also probably a little bit more robust to dealing with a larger amount of targets. So overall, I would have to say that the weapon system is a very good one, and probably has a lot of potential going on into the future. The thing I'm wondering about is if that could be used on the ground, because I don't know if this is the kind of laser. I haven't never really been able to look into this enough. I don't know if this is the kind of laser that can end up causing eye damage if you even see the beam. I don't know about that or not. That might end up impeding it being used on the ground. It might just be used in the naval role for now, and then the ground role later when they can figure out how to sort that issue out. But that's what I would understand at the moment. I believe that in the future, air defense will most likely be conducted with laser systems like that, even on the ground role, because think about it. If you can get a laser high power enough with enough range, you don't even have to account for lead. You don't, like, the ballistics computers of the future are probably going to be a lot more simple than the ballistic computers of today, because all it will have to do is pick up a target on radar or pick up some kind of an object in the sky, point the laser directly at it, and then just fire right at it, because, you know, the laser travels at the speed of light, so there's not really a lot of, you know, trajectory calculation you have to do there, or having to factor in for lead. So you could easily shoot down aircraft a good distance away, shoot down incoming air targets a good distance away, as long as these weapons get more powerful with a greater range. And so I would have to say, I think that those kinds of laser air defense systems are certainly the future of air defense. And I mean, it's going to be crazy. I think those kinds of laser systems may actually make hypersonic missiles defunct, because as long as you have some kind of a radar system to complement the laser that can pick up the incoming target that's going at, you know, like Mach 7 or whatever, you can easily point a laser at that and then end up detonating the missile in the air. You could do all kinds of stuff with laser air defense. That is, in my opinion, the future of what air defense will look like. The Patriot, the THAAD, all of those systems will be of the past for the large part. It will be entirely laser-based. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, helping us to keep it running, and also getting that question from Yorn, because that was a great question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to TV, who puts in a 5 and says, what do you think about what ghost politics says, and that we don't care if Ukraine wins and just deplete Russia out of superpower status.
Who is Ghost Politics?
Oh, he's a ghost.
Ooh, I'm the shadow
I don't know.
government. I don't know. I don't know who that is. I would say that's not true, because no one ever just runs a war just to run other people down and then not care if the other side, if your side loses. You support people for them to win. I mean, we didn't fight the Ukraine. Oh, well, we didn't fight the Korean War saying, we don't give a damn if South Korea loses at the end of this. And we also didn't fight the Vietnam War saying we don't give a damn if Vietnam loses at the end of this. And of course, South Vietnam did lose at the end of it, but that wasn't the point. We weren't just trying to wear down the North Vietnamese. We were actually trying to make sure that South Vietnam would exist like South Korea. We were trying to make sure that in Afghanistan, the government that we set up there would exist when we were gone. Same with Iraq. Well, you never go into anything fighting a war and wasting time and resources to get nothing out of it, really, than just wearing other people down. You always go in there with the objective of actually winning some physical, tangible objective that will survive long term. And so I would have to say, I would personally disagree with that notion. We support Ukraine as we see a decent amount of potential strategically, economically, and not only that, on a diplomatic level, against the Russians. And we plan on winning. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chris Skalski, who puts in a 5 and says, I'm worried about the temporary Russian breakthrough of west of Avdiivka, and can they hold the line?
It is concerning. I will say that we actually haven't covered this a lot on this channel, but as of not too long ago, the Russians ended up overrunning the entire defensive line from Berdichi to Tunenke. They're now moving on to the second defensive line that is in the area from Novoalexandriivka, Yekhanivka, Novoselivka, Persia, and Yasnobrodivka, and it looks like they're actually starting to push forward a good bit. I don't really know what to take from this at the moment, because the only thing that they could actually threaten is the highway up here that heads to Konstantinivka, but even then there's a secondary supply route from Slavyansk and Kramatorsk that's far enough away from the front lines that it wouldn't be in direct threat. So I'm actually having a little bit of a hard time trying to understand what their goal is here, because they still have a large amount of empty countryside that they have to advance through to get to any kind of a goal at all, even Pokrovsk, which would be a largely minor goal except for controlling the highway links that head further into the center of the Donetsk Oblast. So going off of that, I would say I wouldn't be too concerned about it. It is a little concerning, though. I will say that. It's concerning because they're starting to move forward, and it looks like it's a slow but gradual advance forward, although they're taking high losses. It's a little concerning, but I don't really know what to make of this at the moment, if this is going to be a terrible thing or if this is going to be something that's manageable. For now, I would go with this most likely manageable, but it may turn into something that is a bit of an issue a little bit later on down the road. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is a big shout out to Robert Johnson, who put in a $5 donation to support the channel. And thank you very much, Robert, for that support. And no comment to address, but we appreciate it very much. And we also have a 5 once more from Teslans, who says, chipping in. Good on you, Enforcer. And thank you so much, young Teslans, for that support.
Hey, thank you, young Teslans, for the support, my young Padawan. But thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to be possible, because folks like you help us to keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a 5 and says, got my mug a couple of days ago. Looks great. And plug it again. And also, Marmot.
And Marmot, baby! But before we get to the Marmot, one more time, we do have to make sure to let y'all know that when this stream ends, which I don't think is that long from now, probably like maybe 12 minutes, this limited edition run will end. So y'all have about 12 minutes left to get to officialenforcerstore.com, link in the description below, and get one of these LSA mugs. They are 11 ounces size, microwave and dishwasher safe. They are made with a process called sublimation, an incredible process, very beautiful design. And not only that, 10% of the profits from these merchandise sales will end up being donated to Unite24. So if you want to help out Ukraine through buying this mug, and also not only that, help out this channel massively, you can get a mug. There is no limit on the amount of these that you can get. You can get 1, you can get 100, you can get anything in between, you can get 1,000 of them. You can get as many of them as you want. But make sure to go to officialenforcerstore.com or the link in the description below while there is still time, because time is desperately running out at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one. Oh, well, actually, hang on. We actually got to get the marmot. We got to go pull up the marmot. Matthew, we got to get the marmot.
Pull up the marmot. Get him out of here.
We got to get the marmot. Matthew, we got to go get it. We got to go grab it. All
The
right.
marmot's shy. It doesn't want to come out too often.
All right, we got to go get the marmot.
It's really the fly who's really not wanting to come out. It's not really the marmot. But
Oh, hello
depending on the
there.
marmot. Hello there. How you doing?
Would you like a plum, Yoda? Would you like a plum? Or would you like a rock?
Oh man, I would love a rock. Please give me a rock. Even if it's not a kilo of rock, I'll take a gram.
You live in debauchery.
Oh, don't hate me because I like rock.
Aw, man, I'm such a big player. Aw, man, I'm gonna get my 8 fans riled up. Aw, man.
Oh no, not the 8 fans. No, Jamal,
Aw,
don't pull out the
man.
9. Oh man.
Call them out. Call them out. Aw, man.
And you too can call out the enforcer as well. You go to Twitter, say @it's the enforcer on Twitter, and give them a call out.
And we would love to see it. But with that, I hope that does address both of those things incredibly well. Thank you so much for giving support and helping this channel to keep running. And I love to hear that you got the mug and that you like it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
And the next one goes to Neil Vizanant. Once more, he puts in a 5 and says, the best way to get at North Korea is to sanction the CCP.
That's actually a pretty good one right there. That is the best way to get to North Korea. I would agree with you right there. That's actually smart. I like that. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Neil Vizanant once again. He puts in a 5 and says, what would you guys say to an LSA wiki and something for the guy who got the random LSA flag?
An LSA wiki.
Yeah, like Wikipedia, but for LSA. Like custom wikis.
Hang on. You know what, Matthew? I'm very interested here. Let me go look.
That's where you document all the LSA lore is on the wiki.
LSA lore, dude. I'm looking around right now. I'm trying to see if we even have a Wikipedia page.
No, not a Wikipedia page, but like a website, like an LSA wiki.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. I think that'd be pretty neat. So what is he asking again? I mean, now I'm seeing him being completely thrown off. What is he asking again?
He said, what would you guys say to an LSA wiki?
I'd say it'd probably be pretty cool. I mean, I think it'd be neat because we could document everything there. I think that'd be cool. What do you think?
I like it. It just sounds like a lot of web design work because wikis are, I think, a little bit more complex than the site I created for the merch. So it sounds like a lot of work. But if I could take some code from maybe Wikipedia site or something, that might help out.
Man, maybe. I don't know if they.
I wouldn't actually do that though. That's just a playful thing.
It's just a little silly thing.
It's a little playful team.
Just a little playful ting. Don't worry. But anyways, I hope that does address that incredibly well, the best I can at least. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Shelty Dog, who puts in a 5 and says, a marmot was pictured on Jeopardy today as part of an answer about Washington State Memel.
No way. That's really cool. See, the Leaf Spring Army is everywhere when you look for it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. Really cool to hear that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next ones go to Marc-Andre Burnett, who puts in a 4, and also Cat Chaser, who puts in a 2. And huge shout out to the both of you. Very much for that support, and we appreciate it very much. We also have a 2 from Neil Vizanant once again, who says, can we see yesterday's loss report, please?
I would have to say, yes, you can. You can. Let me go find it really quickly. Let me get to Twitter. Heavens. Let me go to Kyiv Independent, and then we'll scroll down until we find it. Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree, Bob. All right, so...
What's that say? Drones ignite Russia's Ryazan oil refinery. Oh, bliad.
Oh, great heavens. Wait a minute. Drones ignite Russia's Ryazan. Oh, that's right now? Oh, well, that'll be news tomorrow.
That'll be in tomorrow's short war video.
Made by Enforcer Matt himself. Everyone give a round of applause for Enforcer Matt. He does an incredibly good job around here. I wish we had a live audience sometimes, Matthew, for crap like that, because, you know, it's just like dead air after I say something like that. It's like, okay, but let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, so the day before, 3 Bobcat skid steers, 1,300 troops wounded and killed, 1,600 personnel carriers, 44 supply trucks, 6 tanks, 37 artillery pieces, 21 drones, 1 MLRS, and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. So the day before was actually even better in the troop loss category for the Ukrainian Armed Forces defense. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you for asking for that. And I hope I hope that sated your itch. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. Let's see. Our next one goes to Neil Vizanani, who puts in a 2 and says,
you cut out.
It says something flavored Gatorade. Explanation now.
Oh, I don't think I can give an explanation on that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Okay, so we're moving on from that one and moving into our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Renew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, David Millsapson, Toxic Bananas. They said the LSA Core Morse code decipher says, Ivan cannot find the way home. Help him by supporting Ukraine and sending him back.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that down on the nail. Y'all hit the jackpot. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to say that is impressive, wonderful to hear. And I love to know that y'all got that right. We will send Ivan home. Either on his own 2 legs, without legs, or in a box. By supporting Ukraine, of course. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Thank you for getting that Morse code message correct. 797 days into the war. And with that, Matthew, it's time for us to get on into a couple of live chats. But sadly, we're out of time. So we're going to be able to address 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to have to round out tonight's stream. So with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to NEN World News, who says, if anyone was likely to start a nuclear war, who would it be in your opinion?
The most likely country to start a nuclear war would most likely be the North Koreans. Just going off of the instability of each government, not factoring in anything else or any hypothetical scenarios, the North Korean government is the most unstable one in the world that possesses nuclear weapons, and for that reason, they would most likely be the ones to start a nuclear war, in my opinion, at least my honest opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Julian Britt, who says, I'm just curious, why doesn't the U.S. have mobile ground-launched nukes?
I believe that at a time we did have mobile ground launch nukes, but we removed them because it really just ended up being something that everyone said is the Air Force's job to drop nukes instead of the Army firing them. Because we actually had an atomic cannon at one time, and I'll pull that up really quickly. Atomic cannon. No, not the song. What the hell's up with all these songs being called random crap? But anyways, here it is. This is an atomic cannon. We did have them for a time. This one's in bad shape, but its entire job was to just fire a nuclear round. The other one was the Davy Crockett, which was also another kind of a nuclear delivery system. So we did have them. It's just that I think we moved that on to being the Air Force's job, in my honest opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this viewer is In5, who says, would Russia entering Poland trigger a NATO response? And if so, hasn't Russia been warned already?
Reread that one again.
They said, let's see here. Would Russia entering Poland trigger a NATO response? And if so, hasn't Russia been warned already?
Yes, they don't really have to get a warning because it's just expected of the NATO alliance that all members will be defended by the whole of the alliance if they're attacked. But if the Russians did invade Poland, that would certainly trigger an Article 5 response, as it would fall under the groundworks that were laid out by Article 4 and Article 6 of the NATO Charter. And not only that, Poland is a full NATO member, so any invasion of Poland by Russia or Belarus would trigger a full-on NATO response under Article 4, 5, and 6. But Article 4 and 6 would be used to justify the invocation of Article 5. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and it is time for us to round out tonight's stream. I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor. It's been an absolute pleasure. At this very minute, while I'm talking right now, our limited edition run of LSA mugs that you can get at officialenforcerstore.com is ending right now. So for the next 2 minutes, they'll probably be up, and then after those 2 minutes, it will end. But I got to thank everyone so much once again for watching. At the peak tonight, we reached a peak viewership of around, I think, 7.5 thousand people. YouTube isn't really wanting to let me know, but over the length of the stream, 45,000 people have watched. We've been entirely honored by each and every one of y'all being here and watching the stream. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run this for every single one of y'all, and we're so happy to be able to have y'all all here and get to share the news with y'all, and have y'all sit in with us, because it's incredibly fun. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army.
And good night, folks. Thank you all for the great stream tonight once more. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, and be sure to join us tomorrow midday for the short war summary, and tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next war news stream. And with that, bye-bye for now.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Пануєм і ми, браття,